Marineford was one of the most legendary battles in One Piece history, a war that changed everything. But what if, for Luffy, this was the day everything ended? Picture this, we're at the climax. The execution platform looms over a sea of ice and blood. In the original timeline, Luffy crashes in, screaming Ace's name, the key shatters, the chains snap, and for one blinding second, it feels like they actually did it. The brothers are free. Hope wins, but in this timeline, that moment never lands. Luffy leaps, the world holds its breath, and suddenly, instead of Ace's shackles breaking, Kizaru's light spears rip through the air. Sengoku doesn't hesitate. Akainu doesn't miss. The platform doesn't become a symbol of rescue. It becomes the place where the future Pirate King falls, and never gets back up. You see? As Marineford wasn't just about Ace's fate, this was the single greatest crossroads of the Great Pirate Era. The entire war was broadcast to every corner of the world. Sabaody, Fuchsia Village, the New World, even the Revolutionary Army's hidden bases. Everyone watched not just Whitebeard, but this insane rookie with a straw hat charging straight at the world government. Luffy wasn't just another pirate anymore. He was the next symbol. So what happens when that symbol is broken on live broadcast? Here's the kicker. When we ask, what if Luffy lost at Marineford? We're not talking about just failing to save Ace. We're talking about three terrifying branches of loss. Loss as in Luffy captured, chained in sea stone deeper than Impel Down, turned into the world government's living trophy. Loss as in Luffy mentally shattered. His will snapped so hard that even the drums of liberation go silent. Or loss as in Luffy outright killed on that platform, his body falling beside Ace's while the world watches the D get erased in real time. So what if Luffy is executed, and the boy who shouted he'd be Pirate King becomes a martyr whose death radicalizes an entire generation? What if Dragon storms the battlefield too late, steals away a broken Luffy, and has to decide whether to rebuild his son or weaponize his name? What if Luffy's death ignites Sabo, Law, Kid, and even Blackbeard into something far darker than the Great Pirate Era we know? Ladies and gentlemen, we're not just tossing out random what-ifs. Let's dive into a full war resimulation. We're going back into Marineford beat by beat, changing one crucial outcome: Luffy doesn't walk away. And then we follow the shockwaves through the time skip that never happens the same way, the Yonko balance that twists into something new, the Revolutionary Army forced into the spotlight, and a final war against the world government where the Straw Hat Captain is missing, dead, or fundamentally changed. So if Marineford becomes the grave of the future Pirate King, how does the story of One Piece continue at all? That's the timeline we're about to enter. Defining defeat, capture, death, or a broken will. So before we tear the entire new world apart, we need to answer one thing. What does it actually mean for Luffy to lose at Marineford? Because that word can mean three completely different worlds, and each one sends the story spiraling down a new path. In the original timeline, Marineford breaks Luffy, but it doesn't end him. As Ace dies, Whitebeard falls, Blackbeard rises, and Luffy escapes with his life and his dream barely hanging on. That pain fuels the 2-year time skip and the comeback. But what if Marineford doesn't let him walk away at all? Let's dive into the 3 defeat models we're going to use as our pillars. Scenario A, Luffy is captured alive at Marineford. No miraculous escape with Law's submarine. No retreat to Amazon Lily. The world government, on the world's biggest broadcast, suddenly has the son of Dragon and grandson of Garp in chains. This is the freedom versus imprisonment route. What happens when the man who screams that he wants to be Pirate King is locked in Impel Down Level 6? Or paraded toward a public execution like Ace was? Who moves for him? Dragon, Shanks, the Straw Hats, or the worst criminals in history? Scenario B. Luffy survives the war physically, but his will is shattered beyond what we saw. In this timeline, Ace still dies, Marineford still ends, but the psychological damage goes deeper. The drums of liberation go silent. This is inherited will versus despair. Does Garp drag a hollow Luffy back to East Blue? Does Rayleigh try to train a captain who no longer wants a ship? You see the tension. If the symbol of reckless hope gives up, what happens to everyone who believed in him? Scenario C. Luffy dies during or immediately after the war. No Sabo reunion, no message on Sabaody, no 2-year promise at all. Instead, the man who will become Pirate King becomes a martyr broadcast to the entire world. This is legacy versus destiny. Does the D-Clan become a feared prophecy? Does Blackbeard steal the Nika fruit from Luffy's corpse and twist liberation into pure terror? Or does someone else inherit that will and turn his death into the spark for a much earlier final war? Here's the kicker. We are not rewriting One Piece from Chapter 1. Everything up to Marineford stays canon. Luffy still invades Enies lobby, still punches a celestial dragon, still breaks into Impel Down. We only branch at a precise moment in the war. Right when, in the original timeline, Law's submarine appears and Luffy barely escapes. Structurally, we'll keep you anchored. First, a quick canon recap of Marineford to lock in the baseline. Then we resimulate the war with Luffy losing under each scenario. And from there, we chase the long-term consequences across the Straw Hats' training, the Yonko system, the revolutionaries, R, and the final war itself. We will jump between scenario A, B, and C, but every time we switch, we'll clearly label which timeline you're in so you can track how one central loss creates 3 completely different worlds. And next, we start by replaying Marineford itself and pulling the plug on Luffy's escape. Marineford in canon, the war the world watched. So before we break the timeline, we need to rewind the tape, because up to this point, everything stays the same. Marineford doesn't start with a hero's entrance. It starts with Luffy, already half dead. Fresh out of Impel Down, he's dragged himself through hell. He's broken into the world's most secure prison, teamed up with Ivankov, Inazuma, Jinbei, Crocodile, Buggy, Mr. One, and a whole jailbreak circus, and then escaped through a tidal wave of Magellan's poison. Yes, even with Ivankov's hormone boosts, Luffy's body is wrecked before the war even begins. You see, this isn't peak Luffy. This is a desperate little brother running on fumes. Meanwhile, Marineford is a powder keg. On one side, Whitebeard's entire fleet, division commanders and allied crews. On the other, the full power of Marine HQ and the world government. Sengoku on the platform, Garp sitting beside Ace, Akainu, Aokiji, Kizaru on the front line, the Shichibukai lined up with Mihawk, Doflamingo, Kuma, Moria, even Boa Hancock playing a very dangerous game. The execution of Gol D. Roger's son is being broadcast worldwide. Den Mushi cameras locked in. Every island, every bar, every slum is watching. This is the war that's supposed to end an era. In the original timeline, it kicks off with Whitebeard's first move. One quake punch, and the sea itself rises up to crush Marineford. Tsunamis on both sides, the sky splitting. Everyone instantly realizes the strongest man in the world is here, and he's not holding back. The Marines answer with the encirclement walls, magma and ice and laser beams turning the bay into a death trap. Oars Jr. charges through that slaughter to reach Ace, only to fall in front of the scaffold, a giant symbol of how far the pirates will go, and how far they can still be pushed back. And then Luffy literally drops into the story. Launched from a marine ship via coated submarine, he crashes from the sky into the middle of the war, screaming for Ace. Chaos spikes. Hancock attacks Marines while secretly kicking them away from Luffy. Mihawk tests him. Kizaru toys with him. Crocodile saves him. It's a swirling brawl where this one rookie captain keeps punching above his weight and somehow surviving. But the momentum is tilting. Whitebeard's age is showing. The admirals keep pressing. The Marines are desperate to prove that the age of pirates ends here, on live TV, with the old era's pillar falling and its future symbol crushed beside him. Luffy becomes the wild card, the living contradiction, a nobody rookie standing shoulder to shoulder with legends, defying everything the world government wants the world to believe. And up to this point, ladies and gentlemen, everything stays exactly the same. The cameras are rolling, the scaffold is set, Whitebeard is bleeding, Luffy is breaking, the world is watching. But what if, right after this, the story changed and Marineford didn't just take Ace? It took Luffy's victory too? Up to the scaffold, Luffy, Ace, and the last-minute salvation. So from here, we're riding the wave of the original timeline. Because before we break Marineford, we need to feel just how close Luffy actually came to winning. You see, this wasn't a clean charge. This was a dead man running on fumes. Luffy is staggering toward the scaffold, body shredded from Impel Down and the war itself, and Ivankov is behind him, literally stabbing life back into him with hormone boosts. Every time Luffy should stay down, Eva hits him again. His heart is racing, his lifespan is burning, and still, he keeps sprinting straight into admirals and vice admirals like a lunatic who refuses to read his own health bar. Kizaru's lasers rain down. Aokiji freezes the sea. Vice admirals swarm in. And yet, but the only reason this push even works is because the battlefield itself is betraying the Marines. Hancock is accidentally kicking pacifistas the wrong way, turning Marines to stone when no one's looking, and clearing just enough space for Luffy to slip through. She's a warlord on paper, but in this moment, she's Luffy's secret weapon. Now, let's dive into the assists that turn this from suicide run into miracle. When the executioners raise their blades the first time, Crocodile of all people blasts in with a sandstorm and saves Ace from instant death. The same man Luffy defeated in Alabasta suddenly becomes a wall between Ace and the world government, and everyone watching the broadcast is like, what timeline are we in right now? At the same time, Marco and the Whitebeard commanders are throwing themselves at Kizaru and Aokiji, trading blows with literal demigods just to buy seconds. Whitebeard himself is smashing the island apart with the Gura Gura no Mi, tilting the sea, cracking the plaza, and opening physical paths so Luffy can keep climbing. The old man is bleeding, coughing, but he's still reshaping Marineford with every swing. And then we hit the emotional peak. Luffy finally reaches the base of the scaffold and collapses. His body just shuts down. For a second, it looks done. Ace is watching from above, chains digging into his wrists, staring in horror as his little brother lies motionless in a puddle of his own blood. How many times has Luffy already been knocked out today? How many times has he stood back up? But here's the kicker. He does it again, through nothing but will. He claws his way to his feet, teeth gritted, eyes wild. And Ace is shaking because this is the same kid who once cried over being too weak to protect anyone, now defying 3 admirals and the entire Marineford system. The executioners raise their blades a second time. The drums of war go silent. Everyone holds their breath. And as those blades fall, Luffy suddenly erupts with a wave of Conqueror's haki. No training, no warning, just raw, kingly spirit blasting out of him. The executioners drop like puppets with cut strings, and even Whitebeard and Sengoku are stunned. That one burst buys just enough time. Whitebeard's men surge forward. Mr. 3 sneaks in with a wax key. Luffy smashes the cuffs. And finally, Ace is unchained. For one glorious moment, it looks like the impossible has happened. The brothers stand back to back, fire and rubber against the world. Anta and everyone watching thinks this is it, Marineford's miracle escape. But what if that victory didn't last even a minute? What if Akainu's rage and Ace's choice didn't just steal a life, but set up a timeline where Luffy himself never walks away from this plaza? The canon tragedy, Ace's death and Luffy's shattered resolve. And here's where we have to rewind and feel just how hard the canon already hits before we flip it on its head. In the original timeline, that miracle escape shatters in an instant. Akainu isn't done. He drags Whitebeard's name through the mud, calls him a loser, a fraud, a failed pirate king. Ace is already past him, already safe. But that insult, that's the trigger. You see, Ace turns back. One step, one punch, one decision that rewrites the story. Akainu's magma fist clashes with Ace's flames and just overwhelms them. We all know that panel burned into our brains, the fist going straight through Ace's chest. Luffy right there, eyes wide, body frozen. He doesn't dodge, he doesn't stretch, he doesn't save his brother. He just watches as Ace smiles, bleeds, and thanks him for loving him. On the blood-soaked ice of Marineford, the son of the Pirate King dies. And it's not just a tragedy for the brothers. Remember, this is a broadcast. The entire world is watching. Every island with a Den Den Mushi, every kid who idolizes pirates, every marine recruit, every revolutionary spy. They all see Ace, bearer of the will of D, die protecting the man who will become Pirate King. The Marines send a message. They will kill symbols of rebellion, they will execute hope, and they will do it live. Luffy breaks, not metaphorically, physically, mentally, spiritually. He screams until his voice rips, claws at Ace's body, then just shuts down. Catatonic. The same kid who rushed Eni's lobby and punched a world government flag is suddenly a limp, shattered wreck in Jinbei's arms. As they flee, every blow, every explosion, every desperate escape is happening around a protagonist who can't even process reality anymore. That's the wound that creates the 2-year time skip. Let's dive into what that really means. Luffy wakes up later on Amazon Lily and realizes he couldn't save a single person at Marineford. Not Ace, not Whitebeard, not even his own crew, who were scattered across the world. That's when he decides to train, to disappear, to come back so strong that no one he loves ever dies like that again. Zoom out, and Marineford doesn't just kill Ace, it kills an era. Whitebeard falls. Blackbeard swoops in, steals the Gura Gura no Mi, and instantly jumps to Yonko status. The balance of power snaps. The new world becomes a feeding frenzy as pirates, warlords, and the world government all scramble to fill the vacuum left by Whitebeard's death. Here's the kicker. All of that, ladies and gentlemen, happens with Luffy surviving. Ace dies, Luffy lives, and that single equation births the canon future we know. So what if we invert it? What if Marineford claims Luffy instead, and the broadcasted corpse on that plaza isn't the son of Roger, but the man destined to be Joy Boy? What kind of monster timeline does that unleash? Because once Luffy falls at Marineford, someone else has to rise. Scene Doi. Choosing the breaking point, where this timeline splits. So if Marineford has to take Luffy instead of Ace, we need one precise cut in the film reel. One exact second where the story can flip. And that window is tiny. We're talking about those chaotic heartbeats right around Ace's freedom, and Akainu's counterattack. The plaza is shattered. Whitebeard is dying on his feet. The commanders are bleeding, scattered, trading blows with admirals and pacifistas. Everyone is exhausted. Positions are scrambled. In that mess, one body being 3 steps left or right instantly changes everything. In the original timeline, Luffy pushes past his limits, rushes the platform, and that insane Conqueror's hockey blast drops the executioners and buys Ace those crucial seconds. He rises again, and again until he reaches his brother. But what if the order of those moments is rearranged? What if the hockey doesn't wait for the platform? In this timeline, the mechanical tweak is subtle, but lethal. Marco and Jozu get dragged a little farther away by Kizaru and Aokiji, forced into deeper engagements instead of hovering near the scaffold. Vista and the others are pinned by vice admirals for just a bit longer. Hancock, who in the original timeline can move relatively freely, is suddenly restrained for a brief moment by Momonga and a squad using seastone weapons, cutting off her chance to interfere. And Luffy? He's already beyond empty. Impelled down poisons, Ivankov's hormone crashes, repeated Admiral-class shocks. His body is screaming. Earlier in the battle, when he staggers forward and sees yet another wave of Marines aiming at him and Ace, and that's when the Conqueror's hockey detonates. Too early, too big, too expensive. Everyone feels it. Fodder collapses. Even seasoned Marines flinch. The broadcast shakes as cameras crackle with static from the black lightning. For a second, it looks even more terrifying than what we saw. But here's the kicker. That premature burst drains him dry. Instead of panting and forcing himself back up like in the original timeline, Luffy's eyes roll back and he faceplants into the rubble. He does not get back up. Now the timing is poisoned. When the executioners move for Ace, Luffy is already unconscious, sprawled in the open, not standing between the blades and his brother. Marco is too far. Hancock is held down. The commanders are locked in their own life-or-death duels. You see the difference? The same war, and the same pieces. But their placements are off by seconds, and that's all Marineford needs. From this altered state, the battlefield logic shifts instantly. The Marines sense an opening, not just to finish Ace, but to secure the man who will become Pirate King, while the whole world watches. Whitebeard's side is forced into a brutal choice. Protect the dying father, the chained brother, or the fallen future. And from this single broken moment, Luffy unconscious, Ace still bound or only half freed, the cameras rolling, we can now branch 3 ways. One where Luffy is captured, one where his mind breaks, and one where Marineford claims his life outright. Now Scenario A trigger, when the future Pirate King is captured alive. So let's lock into the first path where Marineford doesn't just break Luffy's spirit for a moment, it chains his entire future. In the original timeline, he's dragged away by Jinbei and Law, barely clinging to life. But what if his body finally gives out on the battlefield itself, right in front of the cameras with nowhere to run? Luffy collapses. Not in a heroic leap, not in a last-minute save. He just drops. His body is still smoking from Ivankov's hormones, every pore screaming overload. Blood pools beneath him, soaking into the shattered plaza. His straw hat rolls off, landing beside his hand, just out of reach. That one image instantly flips everything. This isn't the unstoppable will of D. This is a 19-year-old kid who's hit his absolute limit. Everyone sees it. The pirates, the Marines, the world watching through the broadcast Den Mushi. And here's the kicker. The admirals and Sengoku don't see another pirate on the ground. They see Monkey D. Luffy, Dragon's son, Ace's brother, the man who charged the Holy Land symbol of justice head on. In this timeline, that vulnerability becomes opportunity. Sengoku snaps, orders fly out faster than cannon fire, capture him alive. No random grunts, no sloppy dog pile. He calls for specialized seastone restraints, the kind reserved for monsters like Kaido. Kizaru screens the area with light. Aokiji ices off potential rescue routes. Akainu focuses on lethal blows elsewhere, while a squad of vice admirals converges on Luffy's position like a kill team with a new objective. You see, this is where the tactical shift really hits. In the original timeline, the Marines were tunnel-visioned on Ace's execution. But in this timeline, Sengoku realizes something terrifying. Executing Ace is justice, but capturing Luffy is strategy. Why kill the son of Dragon when you can parade him as a chained failure in front of the entire world? And then there's Garp. He's already frozen by Ace's situation, torn between duty and family. But now, he looks down and sees his unconscious grandson lying at the Marine's mercy. Seastone cuffs being brought in. His fists tremble. His jaw clenches. Every instinct screams at him to move, to smash those vice admirals into the ground. Yet once again, he doesn't. That hesitation becomes its own kind of betrayal. Whitebeard's forces? They're locked on the main objective. Ace's chains? The execution platform? Ward holding the line for their dying captain. From their perspective, Luffy is either being shielded by the chaos of allies or is already beyond saving. In that split focus, a disciplined Vice Admiral squad secures Luffy, clamps the sea stone on his wrists and neck, and drags him out of the blood and rubble. The war rages. But somewhere behind the marine lines, Luffy is loaded onto a secure vessel under Sengoku's direct orders. The broadcast Den Mushi zooms in one last time. The man who will become Pirate King, unconscious, bound in sea stone, carried away like cargo. And the world realizes this timeline now has a captured future Pirate King. So what happens when that prisoner becomes a symbol even more dangerous than a free rookie? That's where our next branch takes things to a terrifying new level. Scenario B, Trigger, the moment Luffy's spirit snaps. But what if losing at Marineford didn't end with chains or an execution date, but with something even worse? What if Luffy walked away from Marineford alive, yet the dream inside him died on that very platform? In the original timeline, Luffy collapses after Ace's death, mentally shattered, but still capable of healing later. In this timeline, we rewind just a few seconds. Luffy is down, the execution platform drenched in blood, the world watching in silence. And then, suddenly, he moves. He forces himself up one more time, teeth grinding, veins bulging, that familiar scream tearing out of his throat as he charges Akainu and the Marines like a wounded beast. For a heartbeat, everyone thinks this is it. The D will defy fate again. Whitebeard's men roar as the broadcast Den Mushi zooms in, and you see that classic Luffy glare that says, "I will become Pirate King." But what if this last stand is exactly what the world government uses to break him? Akainu doesn't go for a clean, desperate kill. He steps back. Vice Admirals pile onto Luffy, crushing his limbs, pinning his face to the stone. Sengoku lets the cameras roll, and Akainu, ladies and gentlemen, decides to turn Ace's final moments into a performance. Instead of that single, sudden magma punch, he burns through Ace slowly, talking the entire time, taunting Luffy for being too weak to save his brother as the world watches every second. Ace is screaming, Luffy is howling. The Den Mushi captures it all. Akainu lifts Ace's dying body so Luffy can't look away, so every island, every tavern, and every revolutionary outpost sees the future Pirate King held down like a child, while his brother is executed twice, once by the Marines, once by the cameras. And that's when something in Luffy snaps. His conqueror's haki erupts, far more violent than in the original timeline. Marines faint instantly, weaker pirates collapse, even some Vice Admirals stagger as black lightning cracks across the sky. For a second, it feels like the world itself is rejecting what's happening. Then it's gone. The haki vanishes like a blown-out candle. Luffy's eyes go empty. No more screaming. No more struggling. Jinbei grabs him. Ivankov covers their retreat. Whitebeard's remnants carve a bloody path out of Marineford. And Luffy doesn't react to any of it. Not to cannon fire, not to Whitebeard's final quake. But not even when Shanks's flag appears on the horizon. Let's dive into the aftermath. On the submarine, on Amazon Lily, everywhere they hide him, Jinbei and Ivankov keep trying. They say Ace's name. Nothing. They shout, "Straw Hat!" "Mugiwara!" No response. Ivankov yells about destiny, about the man who will shake the world. Luffy just stares at the ceiling. Here's the kicker. When someone says Pirate King, Luffy's body actually flinches, but his mouth won't form the words. The idea of freedom, of adventure, of setting sail with his crew. Those memories are there, yet the will that drove them has been ripped out. This isn't shock anymore. This is a total psychological shutdown. News spreads fast. Dragon receives a report. Luffy survived Marineford. He's safe. But the agent hesitates before finishing. The boy who declared war on Eni's lobby, and who rang the ox bell, who screamed his dream to the world, can't even say, "I will become Pirate King now." Rayleigh hears the same thing and goes silent. So what happens to a world that just watched its brightest flame get snuffed out without killing the body? Who steps up when the D who should have changed everything refuses to move at all? The answer to that question sends this timeline into an entirely different kind of storm. Scenario C trigger, the death of Monkey D, Luffy at Marineford. And then we flip the switch. Up until now, Luffy's been broken in spirit. But what if this timeline doesn't stop there? What if Marineford doesn't just crush his will, it takes his life? The battlefield is chaos. Whitebeard is already staggering, half his face gone. Akainu is still hunting. A magma boiling off his fists as he chases Ace and Jinbei like a demon. Luffy is done. His body is shaking. Ivankov's hormones have wrung him dry, and in the original timeline, he barely survives the next few minutes. But in this timeline, everything converges in one horrible instant. Ace stumbles. Jinbei's carrying Luffy, trying to retreat. A stray magma hound from Akainu tears across the field, not aimed at anyone in particular, just pure destruction. Marco's too far. Vista's locked with Mihawk. No one is there. And Luffy, barely conscious, suddenly sees it. He moves. It's not Gear Second. It's not some last-minute power-up. It's a broken body forcing itself to take one more step. He throws himself off Jinbei's shoulder and plants his feet between that magma fist and Ace. We've seen this shot before, right? Ace turning, as fire flickering out, shielding his little brother. But here, it's reversed. Luffy's back fills the frame. Akainu's fist punches straight through. No rubber tricks, no hockey barrier, just exhausted flesh that can't bounce back anymore. The sound cuts out. You see the hole? The steam? The burning? Luffy's eyes are wide for a second, like he's still trying to process the pain. And then his body slumps against Akainu's arm before falling into the blood-soaked snow. Here's the kicker. This is all still being broadcast. The same Den Mushi that showed the world Whitebeard's quake and Ace's execution platform now zooms in on the rookie who punched a celestial dragon, invaded Impel Down, and stormed Marineford. Dying in real time. Every village that cheered for Straw Hat, every pirate who laughed at his insanity suddenly goes silent. Ace screams. It's that same raw animal sound we know from canon, but flipped. He's crawling toward Luffy instead of the other way around, flames exploding uncontrollably, burning friend and foe alike. Garp moves. This time, he doesn't hesitate. He launches off the execution platform, veins bulging, ready to kill Akainu with his bare hands, and Sengoku has to transform and physically slam him into the stone to stop him. Shanks, far away on his ship, pauses mid-sentence. You see his hand clench around his sake cup, the liquid shaking. Dragon's agents, watching from the shadows, go pale. Their key piece, the D they were waiting on, is gone. The last shot, Luffy's straw hat lying in the red-stained snow of Marineford. Brim burned, strings snapped. The Den Mushi's eyes are wide in horror, still transmitting. And the narrator asks, if the man destined to shake the world dies here, who carries his will next? Rewinding the war. How one knockout reshapes every clash. Marineford doesn't stop to mourn. It weaponizes the moment. As Luffy's hat hits the snow, the battlefield's logic rewrites itself. In the original timeline, Luffy's mad dash, gear second charges, and screaming clashes with admirals kept everyone reacting to him. But what if, in this timeline, that chaos engine is gone halfway through the war? Suddenly, every eye that would have tracked the rookie with the straw hat snaps back to the real Titan. Whitebeard. Let's dive into the rewound war. First, those scattered skirmishes. In the original timeline, Luffy constantly cuts across the board, crashing into Mihawk, dodging Kizaru, getting saved by Vista, Marco, even Crocodile. Each time, Marines have to peel units off Ace's execution to swat this one-rubber upstart. In this timeline, once Luffy collapses or dies, the admirals no longer play whack-a-mole with a future emperor. Akainu doesn't waste attacks taunting a rookie. Aokiji isn't freezing him mid-sprint. Kizaru isn't lazily beaming him down. They turn inward. Akainu pushes harder on Whitebeard's heart. Aokiji focuses on locking down the commanders with ice walls instead of freezing the ocean just to stall Luffy's path. Kizaru becomes pure crowd control, sniping division leaders instead of kicking a single supernova. The result? The commanders start dropping faster, and Ace's platform becomes a clean, defended kill zone instead of a chaotic highway. Here's the kicker. Hancock loses her cover story. In the original timeline, and she could accidentally kick Marines, accidentally shatter pacifistas, and accidentally free Luffy's cuffs because he was visibly sprinting through the war. Her obsession had a moving target. In this timeline, Luffy is down, buried in rubble, or lying in a pool of blood. If she rushes to his side, every vice admiral watching the feed asks the same question you are. Why is a Shichibukai risking everything for one rookie? So she hesitates. She keeps up appearances. She kicks Marines, but not toward Luffy. She glares at admirals, but doesn't fully betray the world government yet. Her love becomes passive, and that single choice stops a chain of tiny interventions that, in the original timeline, kept Luffy alive second by second. Crocodile and Buggy? Completely different trajectories. In the original timeline, Crocodile keeps intersecting with Luffy's route, almost like fate is dragging an ex-warlord into the Straw Hat's orbit. He blocks Mihawk's slash, clashes with Doflamingo, even helps cover Luffy from Akainu. In this timeline, with no Luffy to unconsciously inspire him, Crocodile reverts to pure self-interest. He uses the collapsing battlefield as smokescreen, testing his sand against Whitebeard's quake scars, eyeing Marineford's foundations, thinking about Pluton and the New World instead of Ace's rescue. Buggy, without Luffy's accidental hype train, goes even harder on self-promotion. He plays to the cameras, not the cause. Instead of accidentally helping Luffy reach the scaffold, he stages heroic retreats, saving random prisoners while staying far from the Admiral's line of fire. The legend of Buggy the Clown still grows, but it grows as a meme pirate king, not as the clown who stood next to the man who challenged the world. Scene by scene, you see it. In the original timeline, Luffy's presence turns Marineford into a storm. In this timeline, his loss turns it into an execution. And with the chaos dialed down, one question rises above the cannon smoke. When the storm dies early, who gets targeted next? Whitebeard's last stand without Luffy's final push. So when the storm dies early and the cameras keep rolling, the spotlight swings back to one man. Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, the relic of the old era who was supposed to hand the torch to the next generation. But what if that torch just got stomped out on live broadcast? In the original timeline, Whitebeard watches Luffy claw his way to the platform, clash with admirals, and stand beside Ace. You see the shift. This isn't just about revenge anymore. He literally says a man who will change the world will arrive, and he gambles everything on that future. His last stand becomes a bridge, not just a bloodbath. But in this timeline, in scenario A or C, he looks up and sees something else. Luffy in chains under Sengoku's heel. Or worse, Luffy's body lying motionless near the scaffold, marine boots trampling the straw hat that Roger once inspired. Instead of the future fighting beside Ace, the future is being crushed while the whole world watches. What does that do to Whitebeard's strategy? Does a man who already knows he's dying still think about retreats and escape routes? Or does something snap? Let's dive into that rage. In canon, even half dead, he's still a commander. He orders a path out, and opens the escape route with that massive quake and tells his sons to live on. In this timeline, that calculus twists. With Luffy gone, with Ace still doomed or already executed, what is there to preserve except his name and his hatred? So instead of carving a corridor, he starts carving Marineford itself. Quakes aimed not just at the plaza, but at the foundations. Tsunami walls hammering the bay again and again. Buildings, execution platform, even the inner harbor cracking like glass. Everyone suddenly realizes this isn't a war anymore. It's an annihilation. Here's the kicker. That changes the emotional tone of his final declaration. In the original timeline, when he roars that One Piece is real, it feels like a blessing, a confirmation, a promise to kids like Luffy watching from the future. In this shattered version, he can still shout that the One Piece exists, because that truth doesn't change. But now it comes out drenched in fury, blood bubbling in his throat as he glares at the emblem of the world government that just executed 2 Ds in front of him. Is it still hope or a curse? Does the world here go chase the dream or tear this system down? And here's the scary part, ladies and gentlemen. Without Luffy alive on that battlefield as a living symbol, Whitebeard's death looks different to every viewer. To the common people, does it feel like the final crushing of both old and new? To pirates, is it a rallying cry or proof that even legends and Ds can be erased? When the sea finally calms and the broadcast cuts, one question hangs over the ruins of Marineford. If the man who would become Pirate King falls here, who dares to answer Whitebeard's last roar? Sengoku, Garp, and the weight of history bearing down. And that question doesn't just hang over the ruins of Marineford. It lands squarely on the shoulders of the old guard. Because while the world sees a fallen rookie, Sengoku and Garp see history looping back like a curse. Let's dive into Sengoku first. In the original timeline, Ace's death is a calculated blow against Whitebeard's era. Tragic, but controlled. A symbol. But what if, in this timeline, Luffy is the one lying on the platform, bleeding, chained, or already still? Suddenly, it's not just a pirate's son. It's Dragon's son. It's a D. It's the boy who crashed Eni's lobby and punched a celestial dragon on live TV. You see, Sengoku knows the will of D isn't a fairy tale. He knows about Roger. Now, he knows about that man who will shake the world Whitebeard talked about. So capturing or killing Luffy feels like a tactical masterpiece and a terrifying gamble at the same time. If Luffy dies here, does the legend of Nika and the D burn out or explode? If he's captured, does Marineford become the cradle of a martyr the world will never forget? Here's the kicker. Sengoku can't show that fear. On the surface, he's the Buddha, calm, barking orders. Cut the broadcast, contain Dragon's name, control the narrative of this boy's fate. Behind the hat, though, he's already thinking about the Revolutionary Army's next move, about Dragon's Rage, about what happens when you publicly crucify hope itself. And right beside him is Garp, living a nightmare he swore he'd never repeat. In the original timeline, well, he nearly breaks when Ace is about to be executed. In this timeline, it's worse. His grandson is the one on the ground. The same kid he let chase Shanks, the same brat who shouted he'd become Pirate King. Sengoku leans in, voice low but cold. Garp, if you move, you will be treated as a traitor. That line hits harder when everyone just watched Luffy fall, because now Garp isn't choosing between duty and one grandson. He's choosing between the Marines and the last living proof of Roger's trust. Pattern interrupt. Remember, Garp once protected Roger's son. He guarded Ace's secret for years. Roger literally placed his legacy into Garp's hands and said, "Take care of my child." And now, watching Luffy broken at Marineford feels like failing that promise a second time. The era of brats he used to laugh about? And he mutters it now like a curse. This damn era of brats? While his own brat lies motionless below. So what does that do to him long term? Garp doesn't flip a table and defect on the spot, but the crack is there. His disillusionment with the Marines deepens. He trains new recruits with dead eyes. He visits East Blue more. He stops laughing as loudly. Meanwhile, Sengoku doubles down. Reports are edited. Luffy's name is framed as a warning, not a beacon. The official story is locked in, even as whispers about the D and Dragon's son spread anyway. And in that quiet gap between the public narrative and the private guilt, the first real seeds of marine fracture are planted. So when the next great incident hits, who breaks first? The old hero or the old Buddha? You broadcast to the world the image of a fallen D, and while the Marines are scrambling to keep their own house from cracking, the rest of the world is just watching. Because remember, this isn't a rumor. This is a live show. In the original timeline, the Den Den Mushi broadcast turns Luffy into a myth in real time. Everyone sees the rookie who charges the plaza, dodges death again and again, rings the bell of freedom just by existing. But in this timeline, that same broadcast doesn't end on Luffy standing. It ends on Luffy stopped, chained to the scaffold, face down in his own blood, or hanging limp in Sengoku's shadow, his Vivre card burned to ash. That's the last frame the world sees before the signal cuts. Here's the kicker. The world government doesn't waste a second. They hijack the narrative instantly. The Son of Dragon, like the most dangerous criminal alive, has been brought to justice. The reckless pirate who challenged the world has been crushed. They parade his straw hat like a trophy, the way they did with Roger's execution, but this time they think they've killed the legend before it can grow. And at first, it works on a lot of people. Civilians in East Blue who saw Luffy punch a celestial dragon now see the price of that punch. Parents point to the screen and say, "This is what happens when you defy the gods." Kings breathe easier. The newspapers scream about order restored. But what if you're a pirate watching that same feed from some dingy bar in the New World? Some see Luffy's broken body and decide the dream isn't worth it. If the kid who stormed Eni's lobby and Impel Down gets erased on the biggest stage, what chance does Small Fry have? And for them, Marineford becomes proof the world government is an unbreakable wall. For others, it's the exact opposite. You see how far the government is willing to go. You see 3 admirals, a fleet admiral, the Shichibukai, the Buster Call level firepower, all focused on one exhausted rookie with a D in his name. That doesn't look like justice. That looks like fear. And the whispers start. Another D has fallen. First Roger, then Ace. Now Luffy. The pattern is too loud to ignore. People connect the dots. Every time a D stands up, the gods answer with a public execution. The old line that those with D are the natural enemies of the gods stops being myth and starts looking like a rule. Let's dive into the character fallout here. Because this broadcast doesn't just hit nameless faces. Sabo sees it through revolutionary channels. And the image of Luffy dying where Ace died snaps something in him. Law, who once bet his own fate on another D named Corazon, watches another D get sacrificed and starts planning in the dark. Kid, already hating the world, sees Luffy's punishment for punching a celestial dragon and decides he won't just fight the Yonko, he'll burn the system that backed them. Even small-time rookies who cheered when that celestial dragon got rocked now see the cost, and they have to choose, back down, or go all in. And somewhere out there, a shadowy council of elders realizes that instead of killing a legend, they might have just broadcast the spark of the next era. So when the dust from Marineford finally settles, the question isn't, will anyone challenge the world government again? It's which of these new radicals moves first, and how hard do they hit? Gear 5 that never was, the power-up denied at Marineford. And that's where we have to rip away the comfort fantasy. Because every time we talk about Luffy losing at Marineford, you know what everyone jumps to. But what if he awakened Gear 5 right there? What if the drums of liberation suddenly echoed over the bay, the execution platform cracked like glass, and the entire battlefield turned into a rubber circus where admirals were slipping, bouncing, getting flung into the sky like cartoon rag dolls? Let's dive into that image for a second. White hair blazing, that goofy grin, black lightning dancing off Luffy's body while Sengoku and Garp stare up in pure shock. The Moby Dick's ruins snapping back together like rubber bands, giants tripping as the ground literally bounces beneath marine boots. You see Ace watching, chains stretching and warping as if they're made of taffy, realizing his little brother just became the most dangerous man on the sea. But here's the kicker. In this timeline, that never happens. In the original timeline, Luffy barely survives Marineford with Ivankov's hormones, Law's submarine, and sheer plot armor dragging his broken body away. He's poisoned, frozen, burned, mentally shattered by Ace's death, and his haki is still baby tier compared to Admiral's. Now ask yourselves, how does that same Luffy, in an even darker Marineford where he actually loses, suddenly jump to godhood? Gear 5 isn't just a power-up you unlock because the story needs hype. It's the awakening of the Nika fruit, the sun god, the culmination of a body pushed past its limits, of haki refined through countless near deaths, of a will that's matured across the new world. In Wano, Luffy has advanced Conqueror's future sight and years of combat growth. At Marineford, he can barely control Gear 2 without collapsing. So in this timeline, when his body reaches its limit on that scaffold, there are no drums, no heartbeat changing the rhythm of the world. His rubber flesh doesn't laugh off magma, it melts, breaks, or just gives out. He doesn't rebound like a cartoon, he crumples like a human. And that denial matters. Marineford becomes the arc where miracles fail. The future Pirate King doesn't get a last-second save. No hidden prophecy kicks in. The D-Clan doesn't flex some secret destiny on command. Instead, on the biggest stage in the world, the boy who challenged the Marines loses. Publicly. Brutally. With no Gear 5 to rewrite the script. What does that do to the Age of Dreams when everyone watching the broadcast sees that even Luffy can fall and stay fallen? What does it say about this world when the Avatar of Freedom doesn't awaken in the war to execute Roger's son? Because if Gear 5 is Joy Boy, if Nika is liberation itself, then we have to ask a terrifying question. Why did Marineford, this crucible of despair, fail to summon that power? Was Luffy's body too broken, his haki too green, or was the world itself not ready to be freed yet? And if the drums of liberation stay silent here, when they finally ring in this timeline, who will be left to hear them? Aren't Whitebeard's prophecy rewritten? The one who will carry the world. And that silence makes Whitebeard's last roar hit way harder. You see, in the original timeline, as Marineford was ending, Whitebeard looked Sengoku in the eye and dropped the most important lore bomb in the entire story. He declared that someone would come, inheriting Roger's will, someone who would challenge the entire world. He confirmed for everyone watching that the One Piece is real. For us as fans, that speech is basically a neon arrow pointing straight at Luffy. But what if, in this timeline, that arrow suddenly snaps? Picture it. The broadcast is still running, the world is still listening. But instead of Luffy barely escaping with Jinbei, he's either lying dead on the plaza or chained in Seastone at the Marine's feet. And Whitebeard's prophecy is still echoing, and the supposed future Pirate King is broken in front of everyone. Does the world laugh and say, "So that was it? That was the man of prophecy?" Does the name Monkey D. Luffy become a cautionary tale instead of a rallying cry? Here's the kicker. The prophecy doesn't vanish. It mutates. The common people, the ones who were cheering when they saw Luffy charging the execution platform, might lose hope and decide Whitebeard was wrong. The Celestial Dragons and the Gorosei, they cling to the broadcast as proof that the world government can crush even the will of D. But the pirates, the revolutionaries, the ones who actually understand how inherited wills work, they start asking a different question. If Luffy fell here, then who was Whitebeard really talking about? Let's dive into the characters who know the deeper layers. Shanks, watching from the edge of the war or from a Den feed, has already bet his arm and his pride on Luffy. Rayleigh trained him because he saw Roger's shadow in that kid. Dragon launched an entire revolution while trusting that the next wave of chaos would come from his son. In this timeline, all three are forced into a brutal recalculation. Does Shanks shift his focus to protecting another rookie like Law, seeing him as the next possible spark? Does Rayleigh decide that no single captain can carry Rogers and Joy Boy's will alone, and that the era itself has to become the one Whitebeard spoke of? Does Dragon double down, treating Luffy's loss as proof that the world can literally kill its liberators unless an entire system rises up together? And then, the Void Century question slams in. If Luffy was on track to be Joy Boy, then his failure at Marineford proves something terrifying. Joy Boy is not a guaranteed respawn. The drums of liberation can be silenced. The ancient promise can be broken. That means the world has already killed its savior once, in the Void Century, and just did it again on live TV. So now the vacuum is real. If Luffy can't be the one to carry the world in this timeline, who steps into that empty throne of destiny? Is it Law with his Opa Opa no Mi and Hidden D? Is it Sabo inheriting Ace's fire and Luffy's dream? Or does an unexpected heir to the will of D rise from the chaos and force the world to rewrite Whitebeard's prophecy all over again? Scenario A Deep Dive: the world with Luffy in chains, and the world government wastes zero time answering that question. On Marineford's final minutes are pure nightmare fuel. Whitebeard is already riddled with holes, half his face gone, the symbol of the old era literally crumbling in front of everyone. Blackbeard still makes his disgusting move, throwing that tarp over Whitebeard's body, and stealing the Gura Gura no Mi. The island still shakes. The seas still roar. But what if, in this timeline, there's one more prize on the board? A bleeding, unconscious Monkey D. Luffy, chained instead of rescued? You see, while Blackbeard laughs and tests out his new Quake powers, the admirals shift focus. Kizaru pins Luffy down with light-speed precision, Aokiji freezes the ground around him, and Sakazuki, satisfied that Ace is dead and Whitebeard is finished, turns his rage toward containment instead of slaughter. In the original timeline, the war ends with a desperate scramble to escape. In this timeline, it ends with the Marines closing ranks around Luffy like a living fortress. Sengoku sees the board instantly. Whitebeard is dead. Blackbeard has declared himself. Ace is gone. And the son of Dragon, the man who invaded Eni's lobby, punched a celestial dragon, and just shook the entire world on live broadcast, is in chains. So Sengoku does something that would have felt unthinkable 10 minutes earlier. He orders a controlled retreat. No more chasing every pirate, no more absolute annihilation. He roars across the Den Den Mushi. Protect the asset, secure the battlefield, control the narrative. Battleships reposition, pacifistas form a wall, and suddenly the objective isn't to erase Whitebeard's name, it's to parade the government's new trophy. And then there's Garp. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where it hurts. Garp watches as Luffy is dragged past, sea-stone cuffs on his wrists, blood still fresh from Ace's death. In the original timeline, he was held back from throwing his life away for Ace. But here, his grandson is still alive, just out of reach. Does he walk down to that cold holding cell on the warship and stand in front of Luffy, fists shaking, unable to say a single word? Or does he stay on deck, staring at the floor, choosing the Marine hero mask over the grandfather's tears? Either way, that silence is louder than any punch. Here's the kicker. The whole world sees just enough. The broadcast snails catch Luffy's broken body being cuffed, the Marines surrounding him, Sengoku's grim face. Commentators scream, "Straw Hat Luffy has been captured alive!" And then, cut. Feed severed. Yeah, the official reason? Security concerns? The real reason? The Gorosei do not want the world watching what comes next. Let's dive into the logistics that make this so terrifying. Luffy isn't shipped back down to Impel Down like any other high-value pirate. No, this is Dragon's son, the man with the D, the living spark that keeps the age of pirates roaring. So instead, a single, heavily guarded convoy peels away from the main fleet, heading not for the gates of justice, but straight toward the Holy Land. Maria Joie. Can you imagine that? Luffy, who punched a celestial dragon on Sabaody, now chained beneath their feet, dragged into a secret facility under the red soil where the sun never reaches. The celestial dragons want a pet. The Gorosei want leverage. And somewhere out there, Dead Dragon feels that chain snap around his son's neck and realizes the war he's been planning just became personal. So if Luffy is locked in the heart of enemy territory, who moves first? The pirates of the New World or the revolutionaries hiding in the shadows? Scenario B Deep Dive. A pirate king without a dream. So if Luffy is locked in the heart of enemy territory, who moves first? The answer is, no one fast enough. Because by the time Jinbei, Ivankov, and the Impel Down escapees claw their way out of the chaos around Marineford, Luffy's already been broken once, and we're about to watch it happen again. He's dragged half-conscious onto Law's submarine. The same scene you remember? The same blood? The same frantic shouting? But what if this time, when the doors slam shut and they dive, there's no desperate scream for Ace? Or no wild thrashing? Luffy just lies there, eyes open, silent, like the war ripped his voice out along with his dream. Medical triage hits first. Ivankov pumps him full of hormones, pushing his body beyond its limits just like in Impel Down. In the original timeline, that insanity bought Luffy enough willpower to keep moving. But in this timeline, his heart doesn't answer. His pulse spikes, his wounds knit, yet he doesn't sit up. He doesn't even flinch. Jinbei grips his hand and talks about Ace's will, about the future Ace believed in. Luffy just stares past him, as if the word future doesn't connect to anything anymore. Days pass. They reach a hidden cove instead of Amazon Lily, because everyone is terrified the world government will trace him. Jinbei tries food, stories, even goofy impressions of the old days on the sea. You see, this is the man who once dragged a warship through the ocean with a smile. Now he can't drag a single word out of his little brother. That's when Rayleigh arrives early, not to meet a rookie who punched a celestial dragon and shook the world, but a hollow shell sitting on a rock, staring at nothing. In the original timeline, Rayleigh offers training, and Luffy roars back with that iconic declaration. Here, when Rayleigh mentions the Pirate King, Luffy physically flinches. He shakes his head. He won't say the words. He won't even look at the sea. Here's the kicker. Dragon hears. The most wanted man in the world learns that his son survived Marineford, but came out spiritually dead. Revolutionary scouts report a boy who won't sail, won't fight, won't even run. Dragon stands at a crossroads. Does he pull Luffy into the Revolutionary Army's deepest shadows, guarding him like a living secret weapon? Or does he trust Rayleigh, the Dark King, to rebuild what Marineford shattered? In this timeline, Dragon hesitates, because the moment he moves, the world will know Luffy still lives. So he watches from afar while Rayleigh tries everything. Hockey lessons, combat drills, even simple fishing trips. Luffy participates mechanically, but there's no spark, no laughter, no dream. And one image keeps haunting everyone around him, the straw hat, hung carefully on a crooked tree overlooking the shore, never worn, never touched. Luffy sits with his back to the ocean, knees pulled close, refusing to turn around. He won't talk about Ace, he won't talk about the sea, and he will never ever say Pirate King again. So if the man destined to change the world has abandoned his own dream, who dares to light that fire back up? And what will it cost when it finally ignites? Scenario C Deep Dive, the Martyr of Marineford. But what if that broken Luffy under the tree was the lucky version? In this timeline, he never makes it to that shore. Marineford doesn't just scar him, it swallows him whole. We stay on the execution platform. Akainu's fist has already punched through Luffy's chest, blood on the stone. The cheering dies in people's throats because something feels wrong. Ace, in chains or barely freed, doesn't get to throw himself in front this time. He's forced to watch his little brother fall first. In the original timeline, Ace dies with Luffy screaming his name. But in this timeline, it's reversed. Ace lives just long enough to see Luffy's eyes go dull. And that's what breaks him. He doesn't get a heroic, reflective speech. He gets a rage that's too late. Ace lunges, whether he's still cuffed or half-free, and the admirals cut him down in a blur of magma and light. 2 bodies, 2 Ds, same platform, same message. The era of upstarts ends here. Now picture Shanks' ship cutting through the waves. In the original timeline, he arrives to stop the war after Whitebeard and Ace are gone, to preserve the next generation. But what if he steps onto that ice and sees a straw hat lying in a pool of blood? That's the hat he bet on. The boy he told, "Come find me when you're strong enough." And the world's greatest peacekeeper suddenly realizes he was too late to protect the one rookie who actually tried. Here's the kicker. Shanks still stops the war, but the energy is different. There's no sense of the future is safe with Luffy out there. It's a funeral march. He demands the bodies. He picks up that hat with shaking hands. Even Mihawk, watching from afar, has to process that the wild card he backed out of fighting is gone. You see, it's not just a pirate who died. It's the potential to upend the entire system. Off-screen, Dragon gets the news in the coldest way possible. A report that the boy who punched a celestial dragon, broke into Impel Down, and stormed Marineford has been executed in all but name. No last words broadcast, no revolutionary speech, just a corpse on the world's biggest stage. What does the world's most dangerous man do when the son he never met dies attacking the very symbol he vowed to destroy? Does he harden? Or does something finally crack? And then the stories start. Instantly. Everyone saw the broadcast, but the legend mutates overnight. Some say Luffy died laughing in the face of the Navy. Others swear he died screaming in pure rage. Some add extra chaos, claim he knocked an admiral flat before going down, or that the sky thundered like drums when he fell. Truth doesn't matter anymore. Myth is faster than facts. Suddenly, the boy who tried to free his brother and died for it becomes a whispered prayer in pirate taverns and a rallying cry in revolutionary cells. Kids in the East Blue carve little straw hats into dock posts. Fishmen in the slums of the New World talk about the human who punched a god and paid with his life. Marines, behind closed doors, warn rookies, if you see a D, remember Marineford. And here's the terrifying part. As ladies and gentlemen, Luffy dead might be more dangerous to the world government than Luffy alive ever was, because a living Luffy can fail again. A dead Luffy can't disappoint anyone. He can only inspire. His wanted posters become icons. His name becomes shorthand for defiance. Dragon's recruiters whisper, he died, so you don't have to kneel. So when the smoke clears and the war ends, the surface looks calm. The Yonko still move. The Marines still stand. But under that calm, a question starts spreading like wildfire. If a no-name rookie could shake Marineford this hard before dying, what happens when the next generation rises carrying his myth instead of his body? And the next time a D smiles on the scaffold, whose shadow will the world see behind them? Straw hats scattered, a crew without their captain. That shadow doesn't just hang over Marineford. It slams into every corner of the world where a straw hat is stranded and alone. Remember, in the original timeline, while Luffy is bleeding out on that battlefield, the crew is already scattered. No Den Den Mushi calls, no captain's orders, just weird islands, brutal training, and a war being broadcast like a horror movie to anyone lucky or unlucky enough to catch a signal. But what if the ending of that broadcast changed everything for them? Nami and Witheria sees storm clouds forming below the floating island as the old scientists crowd around a monitor. First they cheer when Luffy reaches Ace, then the cheers die. In Scenario A, when the feed cuts to Luffy in chains under Marineford's ruined sky, you can feel the temperature drop. Nami's first instinct? Steal a balloon, sail, anything. But she's stuck in the sky with zero clue where her Nakama even are. That helplessness becomes fuel. Every new weather weapon she learns isn't just for survival anymore, it's for a future jailbreak. Zoro trains under Mihawk, blades clashing in that quiet castle. Perona bursts in, shaking, holding a newspaper. Straw Hat Luffy captured. In this timeline, Zoro doesn't crack jokes. He stands up, still bleeding, and tells Mihawk, if I can't cut you down, I can't cut through the world to reach my captain. Scenario A turns his training from ambition into a death sentence he's preparing to deliver to the world government. Sanji on Kamabaka Kingdom hears the Okama gossip first. Rumors, then the paper. Then, in Scenario C, our confirmation. Straw Hat Luffy executed. The panel you see in your head is Sanji smoking in the rain, plate of food going cold. Does he disband and live quietly? No shot. He starts mastering Hell's memories, not just to protect Luffy's dream, but to burn the symbol of that scaffold into every marine base he ever steps into. Let's dive into the more twisted Scenario B. The crew hears that Luffy survived Marineford, but he's not the same. Robin with the revolutionaries reads government memos calling him a broken weapon, a failed symbol. She's seen this propaganda before. She doesn't buy it, but the phrase, not the same, sticks. You see, for Robin, the question becomes, when they reunite, will she be protecting her captain's body, or his will? Frankie in Vegapunk's old lab watches a grainy replay. In Scenario B, Luffy lives. But his eyes after the war are empty. Frankie's response is classic. If their captain's spirit is flickering, then the ship and the crew have to shine twice as bright. He upgrades the Thousand Sunny like he's building a throne for a king who forgot he was royalty. Here's the kicker. Scenario C is where it hits the hardest. Brook on Namakura Island plays a song for a captain who will never hear it again. Chopper, alone on the bird-infested nightmare of Birdie Kingdom, reads the headline and blames himself for not being strong enough to save anyone. Usopp on Boyne Archipelago stares at the sky, shaking, before screaming that he'll become a brave warrior of the sea in Luffy's name or die trying. Some Straw Hats decide they'll keep sailing exactly as Luffy wanted. Others lean darker, more revolutionary, but more like a crew of Avengers than dreamers. And somewhere out there, the world starts asking a terrifying question. If the Straw Hats keep moving without their sun, what kind of monsters are they about to become? Because the next time they raise that Jolly Roger, it might not just be a pirate flag, it might be a declaration of war. The time skip that warped, training without Luffy's beacon. So when that Jolly Roger stops being just a symbol and starts looking like a war banner, What happens to the time skip itself? In the original timeline, Luffy collapses after Marineford, realizes he wasn't strong enough to save Ace, and Rayleigh gives him a brutal truth. If he wants to protect his friends, he needs 2 years. Simple, painful, clean. But what if that core motivation gets twisted in 3 completely different directions? Because in this timeline, Luffy doesn't walk away from Marineford as a free, determined captain. He's either in chains, shattered on the inside, or gone. And suddenly, the 2-year gap isn't just training to survive the new world. It becomes a countdown. Scenario A first, Luffy captured. The whole world sees the man who will become Pirate King dragged away in Seastone. That image burns into the crew's minds. So they're training? It's not abstract anymore. It's a prison break syllabus. Zoro isn't just chasing Mihawk's level, he's visualizing cutting through admirals, pacifistas, and the gates of justice themselves. Nami doesn't just study weather, she's mapping marine currents, secret routes into Mariajois, the wind patterns around Marineford's ruins. Every log post becomes a potential infiltration route. Usopp on Boyne Island? In the original timeline, he trains to be braver and stronger. In this timeline, he's building siege weapons, snipers' nests, and toxins specifically to crack marine fortresses. His dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea takes on teeth. Less gag, more guerrilla fighter. Scenario B, Luffy survives but breaks inside. He's alive, but the drums of liberation are silent. Here's the kicker, the crew's training goal shifts from protect Luffy to give Luffy a reason to come back. Sanji doesn't just chase all blue, he perfects dishes that can heal trauma, restore stamina, keep a broken captain fighting. Chopper digs into medicine that can treat psychological scars as much as physical ones, because they fully expect to meet a Luffy who's lost his smile. Every Straw Hat is training to become proof that Luffy's dream still lives. And when he sees them again, they want him to look at their strength, their progress, and feel that old fire reignite. It's not just survival, it's emotional resurrection. Scenario C is the darkest. Luffy dies at Marineford. The time skip becomes a wake held in motion. 2 years of mourning sharpened into purpose. Zoro trains under Mihawk, not just to surpass him, but to become the blade that carries Luffy's promise to the end of the world. Nami's dream of drawing a map of the entire world twists into something revolutionary. A map designed to topple the world government, charting fault lines, oppressed nations, and future battlefields. Robin, already tied to the Revolutionary Army, dives even deeper. In this timeline, she's not just uncovering history, she's helping Dragon weaponize it, turning the will of D into a banner for open rebellion. Now Usopp, that brave warrior of the sea, becomes a quiet legend in the making, a sniper whose shots decide battles, a man who tells stories of a dead captain to keep the flame alive. And here's the terrifying question, ladies and gentlemen. When the 2 years end, and the Straw Hats step back onto the stage, whether to save their imprisoned son, to heal their broken captain, or to avenge a fallen king, what exactly is waiting for the world government on the other side of that time skip? Because the reunion isn't just coming. It's about to hit like a new era. Blackbeard's rise in a world where Luffy fell. And waiting in that darkness is Teach. Because no matter which way Marineford breaks for Luffy, Blackbeard still walks away with the Quake powers and a Yonko crown. In the original timeline, that alone was terrifying. But what if he steps into a new world where the most chaotic future threat, the Rubber Kid with the D, has been removed, broken, or erased on live broadcast? That changes how he moves, instantly. Let's dive into Scenario A. Luffy captured instead of dead. The whole world has just watched the man who will become Pirate King dragged off in chains, and the world government is sitting on the single most dangerous symbol of rebellion since Roger. You see, this is exactly the kind of chaos Blackbeard loves. In this timeline, after stealing the Gura Gura no Mi and becoming a Yonko, he doesn't just vanish into the shadows. He starts circling the same prisons and facilities that hold Luffy, treating Impel down and whatever secret lab they stash him in as future loot. Does Teach try to bargain? Offering his services as a blunt weapon against other pirates in exchange for access? Or does he deliberately stir up jailbreaks and riots around Luffy's imprisonment, letting the government exhaust itself while he cherry-picks devil fruits and territory? Either way, with Luffy off the board, there's no idiot rubber pirate constantly crashing his set pieces. Blackbeard's schemes run cleaner, scarier. Scenario B shifts the angle. Luffy survives Marineford, but comes out mentally shattered, a broken son hiding in some revolutionary or Amazon lily corner. Short term, he's no threat. And that's where Blackbeard, the man who reads people frighteningly well, makes his biggest misread. Because he looks at the new world and sees Law, Kid, Sabo, maybe even Ace's old division commanders, and he underestimates them. They're not Luffy, and they don't have Nika. Easy. But what if Law starts hunting poneglyph roots out of sheer obligation to the D he couldn't save? Or Kid turns his rage at Marineford into a personal crusade against Blackbeard's empire? Or Sabo inherits Luffy's dream directly and brings the full weight of the revolutionary army into Yonko turf? Suddenly, Teach has blind spots. He plans for the Straw Hat. He forgets the people who carry the will behind it. And then there's Scenario C. Luffy dies at Marineford. No rescue, no recovery. Just a second execution, broadcast to everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, in that nightmare branch, Blackbeard becomes the unchallenged face of the D era. He seizes Whitebeard's power, claims the seas Roger once shook, and stands as the only living D openly reshaping the world through fear. But here's the kicker. Without Luffy constantly ruining his timing, does Blackbeard consolidate power faster? Does he lock down islands, weaponize more devil fruits, and force the Marines, the Gorosei, even Dragon himself into more extreme, desperate countermeasures years earlier than in the original timeline? And if the world overcorrects to stop him, what kind of final war are we really heading toward? The Yonko balance. Shanks, Big Mom, and Kaido react. And while Blackbeard is racing ahead, the other monsters at the top of the sea are watching too. Because when Luffy loses at Marineford, the Yonko balance doesn't just tilt a little. It shudders. It cracks. And everyone with a crown starts asking the same question. Did the world just lose its next Pirate King, or its most dangerous wildcard? Let's dive into Shanks first. And because this hits him in a way it hits no one else. In the original timeline, he arrives to stop the war, protects Luffy's body, and quietly bets the future on that goofy kid from Fuchsia. But what if in this timeline, Scenario C happens and Luffy dies on that scaffold or on that battlefield? Suddenly, that hat he once placed on a smiling boy's head becomes a gravestone. Shanks has already clashed with Kaido just to keep Marineford from getting worse. Now, he stops playing nice with the world government. You see, the man who walked into Marieshwa to talk peace can walk in again for war. He starts targeting government supply lines, CP0 agents, even Celestial Dragon assets in the shadows, forcing the Gorosei to treat a peaceful Yonko as an active revolutionary threat. Scenario A, Luffy is captured instead. Not dead. Just caged. Shanks knows this is the world government's ultimate hostage. Does he storm Impel Down? Does he broker a terrifying deal with Dragon, the very man he warned at Logetown? In this timeline, Shanks becomes the quiet knife in the dark, moving red hair spies, bribing underworld brokers, and preparing a surgical strike to free the boy who once inspired him. Then Scenario B. Luffy lives, but his spirit is shattered by Marineford. Shanks doesn't just wait 2 years to meet him at Wano. He seeks him out. He becomes less distant legend, more hands-on mentor, pushing Luffy to stand back up. Because if the man Roger is waiting for breaks here, the entire story of the D-Clan collapses. Now flip the lens to Big Mom. In the original timeline, she sees Luffy as a future annoyance, a rogue supernova who wrecks her tea party and steals Sanji. But what if Luffy is dead, jailed, or broken before Whole Cake? Instantly, one problem disappears, and Charlotte Linlin reallocates that attention like a true emperor. She doubles down on political marriages, accelerates the Charlotte web across the new world, and turns her focus toward other rookies. Kid, Law, maybe even a Rising Ace timeline instead of Luffy. Without the Straw Hats barging into Tato Land, there's no Sanji retrieval the way we know it, no wedding cake chaos, no Yonko humiliation broadcast through the underworld. And Kaido? This is where it gets scary. The beast who wants the greatest war in history watches Marineford and sees a spark. In the original timeline, Luffy's rise, his alliance with Law, and the Wano Rebellion give Kaido his perfect stage. But in this timeline, that spark is snuffed out at Marineford. Now Kaido is furious, disappointed, so he forces the apocalypse himself. Without Luffy interfering in Punk Hazard, Dressrosa, and Zoo, there is no Law-Luffy alliance targeting Kaido. Doflamingo keeps his throne longer, the Smile pipeline stays intact, and Wano remains a closed slaughterhouse. No Rooftop 5, no Nika drums shaking Onigashima. Even Big Mom never gets lured into that insane Yonko versus Yonko free-for-all. She's too busy expanding her own empire to stumble into Wano as a third-party chaos factor. Sanji's retrieval? That becomes a backroom tragedy instead of a rescue arc. Zeph's life is leveraged, Germa's deal goes through, and Sanji is locked into the Charlotte machine with no Luffy to literally crash the wedding. The Straw Hats, scattered and leaderless, don't have the same gravitational pull to reform. No, you might see Zoro drifting into a bounty hunter legend, Nami becoming a reluctant underworld navigator, Usopp hiding on some far-off island still dreaming of Elbaf but never getting there. So who actually challenges the Yonko now? Here's the kicker. With Luffy off the board, the vacuum doesn't stay empty. You see rival alliances forming in the dark, Kid and Killer linking up with Law, Whitebeard remnants rallying around Marco or Ace in alternate branches. Dragon and the revolutionaries making riskier plays in the New World itself. But without Luffy's optimism and insane luck tying these threads together, are these coalitions more brutal, more transactional, more willing to burn islands to the ground if it means toppling Big Mom or Kaido? If the Yonko finally fall in this world, do they fall to heroes? Or to something even worse? As those new monsters rise, what happens when the world government decides the only answer is total, indiscriminate war on pirates everywhere? The Revolutionary Army's Gambit. Dragon Son as asset or wound. So when the world government goes all in and declares total war on pirates, there's one faction that can't stay quiet anymore: the Revolutionary Army. And now, Marineford hasn't just ended an era, it's put Dragon's own blood on the altar. That changes everything. In the original timeline, Dragon stays in the shadows, building cells, gathering weapons, waiting for the right spark. But what if that spark isn't Sabo's memories, or a celestial dragon atrocity? It's Luffy losing at Marineford. Let's dive into how Dragon's entire playbook gets rewritten, depending on which nightmare you're in. Scenario A, Luffy is captured. Not dead, not free. A living trophy, the son of Dragon, the grandson of Garp, the boy who charged Marineford and failed. Suddenly, every prison transfer, every rumor of a secret facility matters. Dragon now has a personal and strategic reason to hit the single most secure marine or world government black site on the map. So what happens? The timetable snaps. Instead of a slow burn, you see coordinated uprisings near Impel Down, Enies Lobby's ruins, and even Maria Joa's supply lines, all as smokescreens to locate where Luffy is being held. Here's the kicker. Rescuing Luffy isn't just a dad move, it's a message. If Dragon can snatch the most high-profile prisoner in the world out from under the Gorosei, every oppressed kingdom suddenly believes the world government can bleed. And if Sabo regains his memories during this timeline and learns Luffy is alive but caged, his role shifts from the chief of staff to spearhead. He volunteers for every high-risk op, turning revolutionary raids into surgical, Luffy-centric missions that drag the army into open conflict years early. Scenario B. Luffy survives Marineford, but he's broken. The will to become Pirate King is cracked under the weight of Ace's death and his own failure. Rayleigh and the Straw Hats want to rebuild him quietly. Dragon now faces the ugliest moral dilemma in the entire story. Does he pull Luffy into the Revolutionary Army to protect him, to surround him with people who hate the same enemy, even if that means weaponizing his trauma? Or does he leave his son in Rayleigh's hands, focusing on the larger war and accepting that Luffy might never stand again? In this timeline, Dragon's choice defines the revolution's soul. If he brings Luffy in, you get propaganda of Dragon's son, survivor of Marineford, used to rally soldiers. If he refuses, Sabo becomes the emotional bridge, secretly visiting Rayleigh, feeding intel, and raging that his brothers were destroyed while he was safe. How long until that rage boils over into more extreme tactics inside the army itself? Scenario C is the darkest. Luffy dies at Marineford. There is no rescue, no recovery, no second chance. And yet, his impact explodes. The world government can't control the narrative. Underground broadcasts replay the moment the man who would be Pirate King fell. Posters of Luffy's smile beside Ace's execution circulate in back alleys. Kids in oppressed kingdoms whisper about the boy who died at Marineford as proof that the system kills anyone who reaches for freedom. Dragon never wanted to use his son as a recruitment tool. But what if he doesn't have a choice? Revolutionary cells start invoking Luffy's name without orders. Sabo, when his memories slam back and he realizes his little brother died on live TV, doesn't just recommit, he radicalizes. He pushes for alliances with pirates Dragon would have avoided, Yonko crews, even remnants of Whitebeard's flag, arguing that if Luffy died challenging the world, then the world has to be shattered faster, harsher, no more half measures. Macro impact? Across all three scenarios, the Revolutionary Army stops being the slow, patient shadow. They move earlier, they hit harder, they coordinate with pirate factions who, like in the original timeline, would have stayed distant. Imagine Dragon secretly arming Law, negotiating with Kid, or even cutting back-channel deals with Big Mom's enemies, all because Marineford wasn't just a marine victory. It was a personal attack on his bloodline broadcast to everyone. And once the revolution steps into the light like that, you have to ask, when the final war comes in this world, is it still Luffy's war? Or has it quietly become Dragon's? And if Dragon is the one steering the storm, what happens when another god finally answers back from the Holy Land? Law, Kid, and the supernovas. Who fills the vacuum? And while Dragon is clashing with the gods in the clouds above, down on the sea, another question is brewing. If Luffy falls here, who actually carries the torch into the new world? Because in the original timeline, the answer was obvious. 2 years later, the worst generation explodes onto the stage with Luffy at the center. Law at Punk Hazard, Kid raising hell in the new world, Hawkins, Apu, Drake, Beej, Bonnie, all carving their own lanes while Luffy turns chaos into hope. But what if that anchor is gone? Suddenly, every supernova you saw at Sabaody is staring at a vacuum. The world just watched a D get crushed at Marineford. Does that scare them off? Or drag them in? Let's dive into Scenario A. Luffy lives, but in chains. Imprisoned instead of free. Law is the first one we need to talk about, because this man is obsessed with the D lineage. In this timeline, he doesn't just see a crazy rookie on the execution stand, he sees a walking secret the world government is terrified of. So instead of waiting until Punk Hazard to cross paths, Law might start planning a jailbreak the moment Marineford ends. Suddenly, a Law-led operation into Impel Down, or Marie Joie, becomes the early version of the Straw Hat Heart Revolutionary Alliance. You see, that means Sabo, Ivankov, maybe even Dragon himself intersect with Law way earlier, turning Luffy's imprisonment into the glue that unites the next generation. Scenario B flips the tone. Luffy is freed, but he's broken, not dead, not jailed, just hollowed out, a symbol that failed. For Law, that's even more dangerous than a corpse. Here's the kicker. Corazon died to stop Doflamingo from abusing the Ope Ope no Mi, but he also warned Law about the storm of the D. Seeing Luffy shattered by the system would harden Law's resolve. He doesn't become Luffy's loud partner in crime, and he becomes the quiet architect of revenge, strategic alliances, targeted strikes on Celestial Dragon assets, no random heroics, just calculated dismantling of the world government, using the memory of what Luffy could have been as his fuel. Then we hit Scenario C, the darkest one. Luffy dies at Marineford. Instantly, the headlines crown a new face of defiance, Eustace Kid. In the original timeline, Kid is already ruthless, already stacking bodies. But without Luffy's chaotic, goofy optimism on the front page, Kid's brand of piracy becomes the default image of rebellion. He leans into it. Massacres, direct assaults on marine bases, a one-man declaration that the age of pirates is pure anarchy. Meanwhile, Law quietly becomes the inheritor of the D will. Once he digs deeper into Corazon's warnings and the meaning of D, Dahi realizes that Luffy's death isn't the end of that story. It's the beginning of a grudge. Law doesn't smile. He plots. He hunts Blackbeard, studies the Void Century, and positions himself as the thinking man's Pirate King candidate. And around them? Hawkins reads darker fortunes. Apu sells out whoever he must. Drake doubles down as a marine plant. Beg turns whole islands into war theaters. Bonnie rages against the Celestial Dragons with no Luffy to accidentally bump into. So you have to ask, without Luffy's ridiculous, hopeful chaos to balance things out, does this age of pirates just slide into something Blackbeard and Kid can own completely? Are we entering a new world that's not adventurous, but outright brutal? Because if that's the case, then the next question is terrifying. When the Yonko system adjusts to this bloodier generation, which emperor falls first? And who takes their throne in Luffy's absence? Dressrosa without Luffy. Doflamingo's Kingdom of Strings. And nowhere does that brutal new world hit harder than Dressrosa. In the original timeline, this island is the real starting gun for the war against Kaido. Law's grand plan kicks off here. The Smile Pipeline gets dragged into the sunlight, and Luffy turns a Celestial Dragon's pet warlord into a global meme by punching Doflamingo through a flower field on live TV. Dressrosa is where the world realizes rookies can topple the world government's golden guard dogs. But what if Luffy lost at Marineford, and that insane, joyful chaos never arrives? Let's dive into 3 timelines where Dressrosa still becomes a battlefield, but without the same sun god energy lighting the way. Scenario A. Luffy is imprisoned. He never reaches Punk Hazard, never stumbles into Law's insane, let's kidnap Caesar and bait Kaido idea. Law still needs to crush Doflamingo to sever Kaido's smile supply, but he has to shop for a different ally. Who does he find? Kid, who already hates Shanks and the Yonko system. Killer, Apu, Hawkins? Suddenly, that alliance looks a lot darker. Less Straw Hat, let's save everyone. More burn the world if it gets us closer to an emperor's head. In this timeline, when Law moves on Dressrosa, it's a surgical strike turned urban war zone. No Coliseum gags, no Luffy befriending gladiators mid-fight. You see Kid blowing up ports? Hawkins calculating survival odds for civilians like their numbers on tarot cards, and Doflamingo answering with birdcage at full cruelty from the very start. The toys and gladiators still rise up. But under a sky filled with scrap metal and blood, not a cheering crowd for Lucy. Scenario B, Luffy survives Marineford but comes out shattered, slower to recover, haunted. He doesn't bounce into Dressrosa right after Punk Hazard, he drifts there later, with scars that aren't just on his chest. When he finally steps into that sunny kingdom, the tone instantly shifts. This isn't carefree Luffy charging the Colosseum for meat and a mystery fruit. This is a captain who's already watched a brother die on a broadcast and knows the world is watching again. Here's the kicker. He still wants to free everyone, but he's more cautious, like more strategic, more willing to listen to Law's cold calculations. The fights get heavier. Gear 4 isn't a hype reveal, it's a desperate escalation against a warlord directly tied to the Celestial Dragons who once ordered Ace's execution. Dressrosa becomes less festival, more reckoning. Scenario C, Luffy dies at Marineford. Ace is gone. The D that smiled at death is erased on camera. Law's hatred for Doflamingo, already personal, turns nuclear. Without Luffy as a living symbol, Law doesn't need a hopeful victory. He just needs maximum damage. He might ally with anyone, Kid, even Blackbeard's enemies, then willingly sacrifice thousands if it means obliterating the Smile Trade and humiliating a celestial dragon puppet. Dressrosa still revolts, toys become human, gladiators rebel, citizens scream Doflamingo's name in rage. But without Luffy's specific brand of liberation, the revolution is bloodier, the casualties higher, and the world doesn't get that iconic image of a rookie smiling over a fallen warlord. Instead, they see scorched earth, collapsing infrastructure, and an island that looks like a warning, not a promise. So when the dust settles, what does the world take away? Hope? Or proof that challenging the throne only leads to ruin? Because the answer to that decides who dares to move next. Big Mom, Kaido, the revolutionaries, and which kingdom becomes the next sacrificial stage. Whole Cake and Wano, a world where the sun never rises. So when the dust settles on Marineford and the world sees ruin instead of revolution, we move into the new world under a different kind of shadow. In the original timeline, Whole Cake and Wano are where Luffy turns that shadow into a sunrise. He crashes Big Mom's tea party, allies with Bege, blows up the wedding cake, snatches Sanji back, then later drags the worst generation onto a rooftop to punch Kaido and Big Mom in the face. Liberation, inherited will, pure chaos. But what if that Luffy never fully stands back up? Let's dive into Whole Cake first. Canonically, Luffy is the engine. He refuses to abandon Sanji, takes the beatdown from him, rallies Nami, Chopper, Brook, and Jinbe, and turns a doomed rescue into a Yonko-level statement. In this timeline, after losing at Marineford, whether it's capture, near death, or a total psychological break, that engine misfires. Do the Straw Hats still move? Yes, but they move like a ship with no captain on deck. On Scenario A, the crew hears about Sanji's forced marriage and heads toward Whole Cake, but morale is shattered. Without Luffy's insane confidence, they lean on stealth and negotiation. Robin and Nami try to work the Vinsmokes. Brook focuses on intel, not heists. Maybe they beg the revolutionaries for a covert extraction instead of a frontal assault. You see the difference instantly. No tea party crash, no "I'll be the one to beat you" declarations to Big Mom, just a desperate, quiet attempt to steal their cook back from a Yonko's labyrinth. And here's the kicker. Stealth against Charlotte, Perospero, Katakuri, and Big Mom's observation network? One slip, and suddenly it's not a rescue mission, it's a massacre. Without Luffy tanking Cracker for hours or matching Katakuri blow for blow, what Whole Cake Island becomes a graveyard of Straw Hat dreams. Scenario B is even darker. Luffy survives Marineford but heals wrong, physically scarred, mentally hesitant. He joins late. Maybe he staggers into Whole Cake after Sanji's wedding already happened, or arrives in Wano after Kaido has crushed the first rebellion. Those delays change everything. Big Mom has more time to tighten her homie's defenses, complete her giant race experiments, and lock Totoland down. Kaido has more time to weaponize Smiles, brutalize Wano's people, and test his world-spanning war plan on neighboring nations. In the original timeline, Luffy's rooftop charge with Zoro, Law, Kid, and Killer is the spark that proves Yonko can bleed. In this timeline, Scenario C looms. That rooftop never happens. The samurai rise alone. Kinemon, Denjiro, Ashura, and the scabbards throw themselves at Kaido, with no sun god drums backing them up. The rebellion is crushed. Momonosuke is executed or broken into a puppet shogun. Orochi's cruelty becomes policy, not a prelude. Kaido doesn't die, he graduates. His Onigashima project expands. Weapons from Wano flood the seas. Big Mom and Kaido, unchallenged by a D-bearing upstart, push the world toward the very war Marineford tried to prevent. Whole Cake and Wano, without Luffy's will, stop being arcs of liberation and become cautionary tales. Failed revolutions that teach everyone to stay in line. And if even samurai legends and a Yonko's own children can't break their chains, who dares to light the next match? Because the next spark won't come from where you expect, and the world government is already moving to snuff it out before it's even born. Your character choices. Rewritten, Garp's breaking point, and right at the center of that tightening noose stands Monkey D. Garp. In the original timeline, Garp watched Ace die, froze at that crucial second, and then just sat down. Quietly resigned. He turned down promotion to Admiral, stayed in the Marines, but you could feel it. His will had cracked. But what if Luffy's loss at Marineford doesn't just crack him, it shatters him? You see, Garp's entire life has been one long tightrope walk. Hero of the Marines on one side, grandfather of 2 future world shakers on the other. He raised Ace and Luffy knowing they carried the will of D, knowing they might one day stand against everything he'd sworn to protect. In this timeline, that contradiction stops being philosophical and becomes a prison cell. Or a corpse. Scenario A first. Luffy lives, but he loses, captured, shackled beneath the very symbol of justice Garp helped build. Every day, the hero of the Marines walks past guards who brag about breaking the man who will become Pirate King. Does Garp salute or snap? Here's the kicker. He doesn't need to openly defect to become dangerous. He can forget to report certain intel. He can quietly redirect Kobe and Helmeppo. He can leak impel down schedules to one very angry revolutionary army. On paper, he's still Vice Admiral Garp, who refuses any promotion. In reality, he's sabotaging the institution from the inside, all for one impossible prison break. But what if Scenario B hits even harder? Luffy survives Marineford, is released, but he's broken. The kid who once screamed his dream to the heavens now stares at the sea in silence. And that's the moment Garp realizes the age of pirates didn't just take Ace, it took Luffy's soul. So he walks into Sengoku's office, shuts the door, and tells his oldest friend, "We're done." He pressures Sengoku to retire with him, to hand the reins to the next generation. And who's waiting? Akainu. Suddenly the balance inside the Marines snaps to the extreme. With Garp and Sengoku gone, there's no one left to temper Sakazuki's justice. You wanted a darker Marineford timeline? This is how you get Buster Calls as policy, not last resort. Then there's Scenario C, ladies and gentlemen, the nuclear option. Luffy dies? Not Ace, not Whitebeard, Luffy. The grandson Garp let walk into Marineford, the boy he punched into mountains to toughen up. When that transponder snail cuts off and the world whispers that the D from East Blue has fallen, Garp's mask finally breaks. Does he storm Maria Joie and demand answers from the Gorosei, fists clenched, conqueror's haki shaking the Holy Land? Or does he just take off the coat, leave it folded on a Marineford ruin, and disappear into the wind as the ultimate wild card for the final war? Because once Garp chooses resistance from within, total withdrawal, or open rebellion, the entire Marine power structure tilts. And the next time the drums of liberation echo, the question won't just be, where is Luffy? It'll be, which side is the hero of the Marines on? Sengoku, Akainu, and the new Marine Justice. And while Garp's choice shakes the foundation from below, the real earthquake hits at the very top. What does Marine Justice look like when Marineford doesn't just take Ace, but breaks Luffy too? In the original timeline, Marineford is already the catalyst for a new era. Sengoku steps down, Aokiji and Akainu clash for 10 days, and Sakazuki's win ushers in that brutal absolute justice age. The war is framed as a necessary tragedy, a warning about the cost of letting pirates like Whitebeard and Ace grow unchecked. But what if the world government walks away with an even bigger trophy, Luffy's capture, his shattered mind, or his corpse? Scenario A. Luffy lives, but in chains. The whole world watched him charge the execution platform. They watched him fail. Now Akainu has something far more powerful than a corpse. He has a living, breathing example. You see, he can parade Luffy as the D who was crushed, the rookie who dared to challenge the Navy and lost. Every time a new pirate with a straw hat or a big dream appears, Dei Sakazuki can slam his fist on the desk and say, "This is what happens when we hesitate." Any Vice Admiral who shows mercy, any Garp-type softness, he points to Luffy's cell and argues that the next D must be erased before they ever reach Marineford. Scenario B goes darker in a different way. Luffy survives, but he's broken. Physically, mentally, spiritually. And the higher-ups decide the world never gets to see that. The broadcast cuts early. Rumors say Luffy died. Sengoku, already weighed down by Ace's execution and Whitebeard's final declaration about the One Piece, steps down even earlier, crushed by guilt that the Marines didn't just win, they annihilated a kid who was fighting for his brother. But in this timeline, Akainu uses that same victory as ammo in the back rooms. He pushes for more buster calls, harsher crackdowns, and special protocols for anyone with the D initial. Whole islands get burned because another Luffy could be hiding there. The name D doesn't just worry the Gorosei, it becomes a target stamped on wanted posters. Scenario C is the most chilling. Luffy dies on the battlefield, and it's Akainu who lands the killing blow. No ambiguity, no cover-up. Sakazuki personally kills the son of Dragon's ally, the brother of Ace, the rookie who punched a celestial dragon and stormed Impel down. That becomes his badge of honor inside the Marines. Admirals and rookies whisper, he killed Whitebeard's heir and Dragon's bloodline. His ideology isn't just policy, it's legend. Who argues with the man who ended the next Pirate King? Here's the kicker. In all three timelines, Marineford stops being a cautionary tale about the horrors of war and becomes a success story about crushing symbols. To the Marines, it proves that if you hit hard enough, early enough, you can snuff out even a D, and that belief doesn't just change their justice, it poisons the entire next era. So when the next spark of rebellion lights up the sky, do the Marines hesitate, or do they unleash something even worse than Marineford? Shanks and Rayleigh, guardians without a successor. That poison doesn't just hit the Marines, it hits the men who once bet everything on one smiling kid. Because when the world watches Luffy fall at Marineford, two people are forced to relive an execution they thought they'd already made peace with. Shanks and Rayleigh. In the original timeline, Shanks throws his weight in at the very end, stops the war, and walks away knowing the man who will become Pirate King is still out there. Rayleigh trains that same boy on Rusakaina, sharpening the next era instead of leading it himself. But what if that bet fails right on the world's biggest stage? What if the Straw Hat Roger pass to Shanks and Shanks pass to Luffy suddenly looks like a broken promise? Let's dive into Scenario A first. Luffy loses, but he's not dead. He's captured, shackled, hidden. Shanks doesn't scream at the cameras or charge Marineford like a madman. He goes quiet. Too quiet. You see, this is where Shanks becomes terrifying. In this timeline, he starts moving pieces in the dark, leaning on old favors, shaking underworld roots, pressuring even other Yonko just to locate one imprisoned rookie with a straw hat. And here's the kicker. Rayleigh isn't just sitting in sobriety anymore. The Dark King knows what Impel Down looks like. He knows how the world government thinks. So he reaches out to the one man whose dream aligned with Luffy's from the opposite side. Dragon. For the first time, you have Roger's right hand and the world's most wanted revolutionary coordinating. Pirate mentor and revolutionary mentor united by one broken kid. How dangerous does that alliance look to the Gorosei if they realize it's happening? Scenario B pushes things even further into the emotional hell zone. Luffy survives Marineford physically, but mentally, he's shattered. The boy who once shouted his dream to the sea can't even say the words Pirate King without freezing. Now Rayleigh's role becomes almost parental. Does he drag Luffy back into training? Like forcing him through trauma the way Garp tried to hammer strength into him as a child? Or does he accept that this timeline's dream might have to be carried by someone else? Ace's will through Sabo, or an entirely new D rising in the chaos? While Rayleigh wrestles with that, Shanks is alone with a different demon. Guilt. He's the man who put that hat on a kid's head and said, "Come find me when you're strong." What does it do to him to realize the world he hyped up was too cruel for that kid to survive intact? Then Scenario C. Luffy actually dies at Marineford. No rescue, no second chance. Both men are forced to confront one brutal idea. Their era failed its chosen successor. Shanks might snap, ladies and gentlemen. Reckless raids on government convoys, clashing with admirals earlier, testing the world government's limits years before Wano. And meanwhile, Rayleigh fades even deeper into legend, slipping back into the shadows of Sabaody, waiting for a new spark to appear, because he can't bear to gamble his own hands on destiny again. And hanging over all of this is Roger. These two watched a man laugh at his own execution and ignite an era. Now they watch a boy who died, or broke, before he ever reached that stage. Does that mean the age of dreams is ending, or mutating into something far more extreme? When the next D steps up, will Shanks and Rayleigh nurture that flame, or unleash it? Because the world isn't going to wait. And the next spark is already forming in the shadows. Ace's alternate fates, living with Luffy's loss. And that next spark might wear a familiar face, or carry a familiar name. Because once we change Luffy's fate at Marineford, and Ace's entire story gets ripped open. In the original timeline, Ace dies and Luffy lives to carry that will. But what if we flip the script? What if Ace survives that execution platform while Luffy is dragged away in chains, broken or unconscious, as the whole world watches? In this timeline, Ace doesn't walk away a hero. He walks away, a ghost. Every cheer from Whitebeard's remnants feels like poison, because the little brother who crashed Marineford for him is gone. That guilt is a devil fruit all on its own. Does he stay and lead Whitebeard's flag, trying to fill a throne he never wanted? Or does he vanish into the shadows, hunting for Dragon and the Revolutionary Army, deciding that the only way to honor Luffy is to burn the system that took him? You see, either route turns Ace into a ticking time bomb. A suicidal rescue attempt on Marineford, a one-man raid on Impel Down. Ace becomes the nightmare the world government thought Luffy would be. But what if we go darker? Scenario B. Ace still dies on that platform. And Luffy doesn't die, but he loses something worse. His dream, his certainty, his ability to get back up. In the original timeline, Ace's last words push Luffy forward. "Thank you for loving me" becomes rocket fuel. Here, those same words land on a Luffy who watched his brother die and then watched his own will shatter. Ace's will doesn't guide him, it crushes him. Every "I will become Pirate King" he ever shouted feels like a lie replayed on global broadcast. Does he even send the 3-day tattoo to the crew? Or do the Straw Hats train, scattered and desperate, for a captain who no longer believes he deserves to be followed? And then here's the kicker. There's an even harsher branch. Scenario C, where both brothers die at Marineford. Instantly, the war stops being just the day Whitebeard fell. It becomes the day the son of Roger and the son of Dragon's greatest ally were executed or slain on live transponder snails. Their combined martyrdom turns Marineford into a holy site of rage. Kids in the East Blue grow up not just hearing about Roger's last words, but about the brothers who died before they ever reached that stage. How many new D-bearers awaken because of that legend? Now, could Ace ever really step into Luffy's narrative role in any of these timelines? That's the big question. He has the bloodline, the Mera no Mi, the charisma. But he also has years of self-hatred and a brand burned into his back that says failure to himself. Even when everyone else sees Whitebeard's pride, Luffy walks into a room and hope goes up. Ace walks in and tension goes up. Could he ever become the laughing, impossible symbol that makes allies out of enemies? Or does he become something more like a revolutionary warlord, a blazing banner of vengeance rather than freedom? Let's dive into the pain behind that. Because no matter which branch you pick, Ace lives with Luffy gone, Ace dies with Luffy broken, or both brothers fall. Marineford stops being a single tragedy and becomes a generational wound. Pirates, revolutionaries, even Marines kids grow up with that scar burned into history. And the next era isn't just about chasing treasure anymore. It's about answering a question. Who dares to dream after the world watched those dreams die? And that question is exactly what shapes the monsters, martyrs, and miracles of the new world that we're heading into next. Macro consequences. A darker, colder new world. So when the world watches Luffy lose at Marineford, the wound doesn't heal. It calcifies. The new world that follows is colder, sharper, and way less forgiving. In the original timeline, Marineford was the end of an era and the quiet beginning of a hopeful new one. But what if that war becomes the moment the world government proves it can kill hope on live broadcast and walk away smiling? In this timeline, Sakazuki's justice wins the argument. The higher-ups don't just double down, they slam the gas. Buster calls become routine demonstrations. The SSG and pacifistas get deployed earlier, not as deterrents, but as public executions of any island that even whispers rebellion. You see whole regions learning the lesson. If Ace and Luffy can be erased, what chance do you have? At the same time, the Yonko don't hesitate. With Whitebeard's era ending and no Luffy charging into their territories, the new world consolidates faster. Big Mom locks her seas down into a sugar-coated prison. Kaido turns Wano into an even harsher weapons factory, feeding the arms race. Blackbeard, unchecked by a rubber upstart crashing his plans, spreads like a disease, snapping up islands, prisons, and devil fruits with industrial efficiency. And while those monsters move, the Revolutionary Army stops playing in the shadows. Dragon watched his son fall. Sabo watched his brother die or disappear. That breaks something. Suddenly, Baltigo isn't just a secret base. It's a war room. You see more coups, more assassinations, more kingdoms mysteriously flipping overnight. They're not waiting for a destined pirate king anymore. They're acting like there is no safety net. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats are still out there, but they're not the same crew we know. Instead of being defined by adventure, they're defined by absence. Every island they land on, every ally they make, it's under the weight of "our captain lost at Marineford." Their 2-year growth isn't just training, it's grief work turned into power. That gives them edge, but it also strips away some of that wild, joyful chaos that made their legend inspiring to random villagers across the sea. And that change bleeds into piracy itself. With Luffy's brand of dumb optimism off the board, the rookies who rise in the worst generation are harder, more cynical. They don't talk about freedom for everyone, they talk about territory, weapons, and leverage. Supernovas become mini-warlords. You hear fewer stories of miraculous liberations and more of crushed rebellions, burned flags, and islands that gambled on a D and lost. Here's the kicker. Marineford's legacy flips. It's no longer the day Whitebeard died and the new age began. It's the day the world government executed the idea that one idiot with a straw hat could change everything. But pressure doesn't vanish just because you stomp on the symbol. So we have to ask, does removing Luffy from the board actually make the seas safer? Or are the Marines building a pressure cooker where, when the next storm hits, it'll be even more explosive, less controllable, and aimed straight at the Holy Land itself? Because the next move, ladies and gentlemen, is where that pressure finally starts to crack the world. Scenario stitching. 3 timelines, 1 broken war. So let's zoom out for a second and actually look at the board we've built, because the pressure isn't the same in every timeline. It's 1 war, 1 island, 1 execution platform, but 3 completely different worlds spinning out of Marineford. In Scenario A, Luffy loses in the loudest way possible: chains, sea stone, and a cage instead of a coffin. The Marines don't just win, they weaponize him. In the original timeline, Marineford ends with Whitebeard dead and Blackbeard crowned as the new monster. But in this timeline, Sengoku and Akainu walk away with something even more valuable than the Gura Gura no Mi, the living symbol of pirate freedom, locked up like a trophy. Instantly, every broadcast, every bounty poster, every sermon from the Celestial Dragons becomes, "Look at Monkey D. Luffy. This is what happens when you challenge us." You see, that turns the entire new world into a powder keg. The Straw Hats scatter and train like before, but now their time skip has a single, razor-sharp goal. Not just getting stronger, but breaking into the heart of the world government to drag their captain back. Dragon and the revolutionaries stop lurking in the shadows and start planning a Marineford 2.0 that isn't just a rescue mission. It's a formal declaration of war. What if the first shot of the final war is literally the jailbreak of Monkey D. Luffy? Scenario B flips the script emotionally instead of politically. Luffy survives Marineford, but he doesn't walk away as the future pirate king. He crawls away as a broken legend. No prison, no execution, just a body and a will that both failed on the biggest stage in history. In the original timeline, that pain fuels his resolve after Ace's death. But in this timeline, the trauma hits so hard that the drumbeat of Nika goes silent. He can't sail, he can't lead, he can barely look at his own hat. So everyone else moves around him. Jinbei, Rayleigh, the Straw Hats, even Shanks from afar, all dedicate themselves to one question. Can they heal the man the world already decided would change everything? Meanwhile, the seas get darker. Blackbeard rises unchecked. Akainu's justice gets even more absolute. The world waits, year after year, for Luffy to stand up again, or for someone new to steal his spotlight. And then we have Scenario C, the darkest branch. Luffy dies at Marineford. No rescue plan, no recovery arc. Just a straw hat falling in front of the entire world. But what if that's exactly what breaks the dam? In this timeline, there is no future pirate king to pin your hope on, so the will of D fractures and multiplies. Kid, Law, Sabo, Ace's memory, even unknown rookies in East Blue all grow up under the legend of the boy who challenged the world and lost. Here's the kicker. Without Luffy, the era doesn't calm down, it gets bloodier. The hat itself becomes a relic passed between crews, a symbol that says, if the government can kill him, then none of us are safe unless we burn the system down first. So from here, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to fast forward each of these timelines straight toward their version of the final war. How does a rescue war, a delayed awakening, or a world without Luffy reshape the last clash with the Celestial Dragons? Let's dive into the endgames of 3 broken worlds. Endgame A, the great prison break of Maria Joie Endgame. A jump's years ahead. Marineford isn't a fresh wound anymore. It's history, a victory. Luffy's defeat has been replayed so many times that it's turned into state-approved propaganda. In the original timeline, kids grew up on stories of the worst generation shaking the world. But in this timeline, they grow up seeing a blurred silhouette on every broadcast. Luffy's name censored, his wanted poster banned, his straw hat edited out like it never existed. You see, the world government doesn't just lock him up, they mount his failure above the mantle of Maria Joie. his capture becomes their greatest trophy. Non-celestial dragons brag about the rubber demon they broke. Marines are trained with footage of Luffy's fall as a warning. This is what happens when you dream too big. But what if that trophy becomes the spark for the final war? Suddenly, everyone who ever owed Luffy a debt, everyone who ever believed in his freedom, converges on one impossible goal: the great prison break of Marineford. Let's dive into the alliance. The Straw Hats have spent these missing years training like monsters, not for adventure, but for a single objective: get their captain back or die on the way. Sabo and Dragon bring the full weight of the Revolutionary Army, because freeing Luffy now means shattering the symbol of Marineford's justice. Whitebeard's remnants, led by Marco, Izo, and Ace's old division commanders, I'd see this as their last chance to spit in the face of the era that killed their captain and stole his brother. Law shows up with a surgical plan to cut through the Holy Land's defenses, while other supernovas like Kid and Killer join in, not out of loyalty, but because tearing down the world government's strongest fortress is the ultimate flex. And here's the kicker: even some Marines move. Garp walks away from headquarters, chains on his own wrists, demanding to be taken to the front so he can finish what he failed at Marineford. Kobe, now a decorated hero of the Navy, is secretly feeding intel to Dragon, crying as he chooses Luffy's freedom over the uniform he swore to uphold. The stakes are insane. This isn't just a rescue mission. If they rip Luffy out of the heart of Marineford, and they prove that no symbol of freedom can be caged forever, that Marineford's final victory was a lie. If they fail, the world government proves the opposite, that even legends can be erased. And deep beneath the Holy Land, what's left of Luffy? Is he a lab rat for Imu's experiments, his Nika fruit dissected by Vegapunk's twisted successors? Has he spent years in total isolation, no sunlight, no sky, no laughter, just the sound of his own heartbeat replacing the drums of liberation? When the cell finally opens, does he burst out grinning and yelling about meat? Or does a quieter, sharper Luffy step forward, scarred, focused, with a rage that even his crew barely recognizes? So if the opening move of the final war is breaking Luffy out of the world government's throne room, and here's the last question: when the doors of Marineford explode and the whole world is watching again, does Luffy still rise as the central figure of this endgame, or has the era moved on to new symbols while he was in chains? Endgame B: reigniting the flame of a broken king. So when those doors of Marineford explode and the cameras come back on, we're not picking up days later. We're years out from Marineford, a whole era where the world kept spinning, while Luffy stayed stuck. In the original timeline, that 2-year time skip was Luffy licking his wounds and coming back hungrier than ever. But in this timeline, Marineford doesn't just scar him, it empties him. Rayleigh still finds him. Dragon still reaches out. Physically, Luffy becomes a monster. Advanced hockey, brutal training, scars on top of scars. Yet when people whisper Pirate King, he just looks away. He's not chasing the throne. He's a weapon others borrow. So the final war doesn't start with Luffy's grand declaration. It starts with everyone else planning around a broken king. You see the Straw Hats and allies building an entire rebellion, like they're carrying a wounded sun god on their backs. Law runs logistics. Sabo coordinates with Dragon. Robin and Koala dig up secrets in Marineford. Yinbei rallies Fishman Island. They liberate islands, topple celestial dragon estates, shatter SSG facilities, and every time they leave a space in the plan labeled, "If Luffy wakes up." Here's the kicker: Luffy's still there. He shows up to fights. He saves people on instinct, but he never finishes the job. He punches admirals away from his friends, which then walks off before the flag can be raised. Nami screams at him. Zoro threatens to cut him down if he keeps half-assing his own dream. Usopp cries and throws his old "Luffy will be king of the pirates" posters in his face. It's hype, it's painful, and it never quite breaks through. So what finally does? What if the world government realizes that Ace's memory is the one chain they still have around Luffy's heart? During the final war, as the Straw Hat Revo alliance crashes into the Red Line, the Gorosei unveil their last bit of psychological warfare: a twisted Ace memorial execution, a new criminal framed as Ace's disgraceful successor, branded with a fake S tattoo, broadcast worldwide, and the person on their knees is a kid Luffy took under his wing in this timeline, a new little brother who believed the old stories. Suddenly, it's Marineford all over again. The platform, the blades, the crowd. Only this time, Luffy isn't too late. He's just too afraid to move. Drums don't start as prophecy, they start as panic. His heartbeat spikes, then stutters, then roars. You hear it before he does. Everyone does. The drums of liberation that should have rung at Marineford finally explode here, at the end of the world, the moment he chooses, on his own, to stop running from Ace's death and fight for freedom again. Gear 5 doesn't arrive as a goofy surprise. It hits like a breakdown turning into a breakthrough. White smoke, elastic laughter that sounds half like sobbing, reality bending as Luffy tears the execution platform apart and cradles this new brother the way he couldn't save Ace. The world government isn't just facing Joy Boy, as they're facing a man who climbed out of the deepest pit and decided to love the world anyway. So you have to ask, is that Luffy, scarred, hesitant, then finally unleashed, more terrifying to Imu and the Gorosei than the carefree rubber kid we knew? And if this is the version of Nika that the world awakens to at the climax, what does the end of an era even look like now? Endgame C, a final war without Luffy. So let's answer that question head on. If this is the version of Nika the world never gets, who actually brings the era down when Luffy's gone for good? In this timeline, Marineford doesn't just scar Luffy, it erases him. The man who will become Pirate King dies on the same stage that killed Ace, and the whole world watches the blood of D spill into the ice. But what if that doesn't end the Age of Dreams at all? What if it mutates it into something far more terrifying for the world government? You see, the coalition that rises after Marineford isn't built around one captain. It's built around an absence. Sabo survives the chaos and becomes Dragon's right hand in full. Not just the chief of staff, but the blazing fist of the revolution, the man who speaks for the brother who can't. Law steps into the vacuum as the strategic D surgeon, the one Yonko-class mind who still believes the will of D is a fuse wrapped around the celestial dragons. And Kid? Kid is the reckless battering ram, the one who looks at the execution scaffold replayed across the world and decides the only answer is to smash Marijoa itself. Here's the kicker. The Straw Hats don't stay a single cozy crew. Years after Marineford, on each of them becomes a captain under the Straw Hat banner. Zoro leads a swordsman armada. Usopp commands a sniper fleet from Elbaf. Nami runs a weather terror navy that weaponizes the very seas the government thinks it controls. In the original timeline, it's Luffy versus the world government. In this timeline, it's the world Luffy inspired versus the world government, a diffuse but unstoppable inheritance of his will. Picture the opening shot of the final war. The red line darkened by storm clouds Nami summoned, revolutionary banners burning in the sky, and at the very front, Sabo walking out of the mist, clutching the straw hat itself, not wearing it, carrying it. Because no one can replace that symbol, they can only march behind it. When the admirals descend, Zoro doesn't hesitate. He calls their names out loud, one by one, and cuts them down in Luffy's name, turning every clash into a public execution of the old order. Usopp, shaking but unbroken, stands where his captain would have stood and fires the shot that shatters Mary Joaz's holy flags, finally becoming the brave warrior he promised to be because there is no rubber idiot to step in front of him anymore. And the Joy Boy prophecy? It snaps. The idea of a single chosen one dies with Luffy on that ice. Instead, the drums of liberation become something else. A generation of liberators, a collective Joy Boy, Sabo's flames, Law's scalpel, Kid's metal, Robin's hands, Shirahoshi's Sea Kings, Vivi's kingdom, even former enemies like Kuzan and Hancock, all beating in sync, not around one man, but around an era he forced into existence by leaving a void. The Pirate King never reaches Laugh Tale in this world. The One Piece might stay untouched, the final page of the story left unread. But the world Luffy dreamed of? That's the real treasure now. The last shot of this war isn't a crown on his head. It's a battered straw hat raised over a broken red line as those who loved him turn his death into the bedrock of a new age the Gorosei never saw coming. So if the government won Marineford, did they actually win the story? Emotional core. What Luffy's loss really changes. So if the government won Marineford, did they actually win the story? Or did they just shatter the one person who kept proving the world wrong every single arc? Because in the original timeline, Luffy is the guy who gets poisoned, crushed, emotionally wrecked, and still stands back up screaming that he'll be Pirate King. But what if this is the one battlefield where he doesn't get back up? In these timelines, Marineford isn't a near-death experience. It's the line he can't cross. Sometimes he dies on that platform. Sometimes he's dragged away in chains. Sometimes he survives. But the light in his eyes is gone. And instantly, the core message of One Piece twists. Resilience isn't Luffy always rises. It becomes, what do you do when your symbol can't rise anymore? You see, that's where Inherited will explode in a completely different way. In the original timeline, Luffy is the active carrier. He's the one picking up Roger's dream, Ace's desire for freedom, Sabo's lost childhood, and turning all of that into a rubber fist punching the heavens. But in this timeline, his will turns into something other people have to protect, like a fragile flame. Sabo doesn't just remember a brother, he becomes the brother who has to live for two. Law doesn't just ally with a rising rookie, he gambles his whole revenge plan on a dead man's smile. Suddenly, the camera of the story pulls back. It's not, watch this one idiot in a straw hat change the world. It's, watch the network that idiot inspired try to move without him. Hope stops being centralized. Instead of everyone looking at Luffy as the sun, you get scattered constellations. Sabo in the Revolutionary Army, the Straw Hats training harder than ever, Kobe inside the Marines, even random kids in East Blue who saw Marineford on the transponder snails and decided right there to hate the world government. Here's the kicker, every dream now has teeth, as Marineford becomes the ultimate warning label slapped on top of freedom. Chase the One Piece? You end up like Whitebeard. Defy the government? You end up like Ace. Laugh in the face of death? You end up like Luffy, broken, executed, or erased. Every rebellion after this feels heavier, because everyone knows exactly what it costs. When Nami sails back into the New World, when Zoro trains to cut down gods, when Jinbei declares allegiance to a fallen captain, those choices are made with full awareness that the happy idiot wins by willpower route is gone. Let's dive into why that matters for us as viewers. These what-if timelines don't just change power scaling charts or which Yonko falls first. They ask whether One Piece still feels like One Piece if the guy who always laughs in the face of despair gets silenced on the world's biggest stage. Does the Age of Dreams die there? Or does it spread, wildfire style, through everyone he touched? Because as we head into the final recap and call to action, that's the real question. If Luffy loses Marineford, do we stop believing? Or do we start believing in everyone else? Pattern break. What if Luffy's loss makes the story better? And here's the pattern break, ladies and gentlemen. What if that's not a downgrade at all? On a gut level, we hate it. We don't want to see Luffy lose at Marineford, get captured, or walk away mentally shattered. We want the guy who always gets back up. But what if, purely as a narrative experiment, that loss is exactly what makes this timeline hit even harder? In the original timeline, Marineford is Luffy's lowest point, but he still escapes. He still gets to cry, heal, and train under Rayleigh. And the story bends to keep the future Pirate King on track. In this timeline, the story doesn't bend. It breaks. Luffy is dragged away in sea stone chains or left staring at the sky, hollowed out, and suddenly the camera has to move. It has to swing toward everyone else. Here's the kicker. A captured or broken Luffy instantly forces the sidecast to evolve. No more waiting for the captain to crash land into every problem. The Straw Hats can't just say, Luffy will fix it. Zoro becomes the iron spine of the crew. Sanji turns into the shadow broker of the New World. Nami weaponizes her brain against Yonko-level storms. Usopp has to become the man who snipes at gods, because the god of freedom isn't there to laugh in front. And that's just the crew. You see, the moment Luffy falls on the world's biggest stage, Sabo's entire arc gets supercharged. Instead of just inheriting Ace's will, he's staring at a world that watched both his brothers die or be broken on broadcast. Law, who in the original timeline plays the clever ally, is suddenly the surgeon of fate, orchestrating jailbreaks, assassinations, and insane gambles to either free Luffy or avenge him. What does that do to the final act? When the hero fails at what is basically the midpoint of the grand story, every future victory becomes terrifyingly uncertain. If Luffy escapes, Impel Down 2.0 years later, scarred and mentally unstable, his eventual win against a Yonko or the world government feels earned on a level that makes Dressrosa and Wano look like warm-ups. If he dies and the next generation carries his Jolly Roger, their victory is drenched in tragedy instead of just hype. And on a meta level, this is exactly where Oda's themes get wild. He's always warned us about the danger of putting everything on one chosen one. The Wheel of D, Inherited Dreams, Nika's Legend, those aren't meant to be a cheat code. In this timeline, that danger becomes literal. The world gambled everything on one rubber boy, and lost. So the will doesn't vanish, it fractures. It spreads into 1,000 smaller suns. So ask yourself, would you rather sail a safer, hopeful journey where Luffy always rises, or dive into a brutal, uncertain saga where his loss at Marineford forges an even fiercer generation to finish the fight? Rapid-fire recap. 3 worlds born from 1 knockout. So let's lock this in. 1 punch at Marineford lands, 1 rubber boy doesn't get back up, and from that single knockout, ladies and gentlemen, we don't just get 1 darker future, we get 3 completely different worlds. In Scenario A, Luffy doesn't die, he just doesn't escape. He collapses on that ice, the admirals close in, and instead of slipping away with Jinbei, he's chained on the spot. In the original timeline, Luffy vanishes after Marineford to train in secret. But in this timeline, he never leaves the stage. The world government parades him as the failed man who would be Pirate King, locks him in the deepest cell they have, Impel down level 6, Uranus Vault, or a brand new Marineford monster prison, and turns him into a living warning. That trophy backfires. His existence becomes a countdown. Every pirate, every revolutionary, every ex-Whitebeard ally now shares one objective: break the symbol of freedom out of the world government's own heart, which the final war stops being Sail to Laugh-Tale and becomes Storm Marineford itself, a prison break apocalypse where the Straw Hats, Dragon, and even rival Yonko throw everything at the Holy Land just to rip those chains off. Scenario B hits even harder in a different way. Here, Luffy survives Marineford, but his spirit shatters. He wakes up after Ace's death, after that defeat, and the light is just gone. No smile? No, I will become Pirate King, nothing. You see, in the original timeline, the time skip is Luffy grinding to get stronger. But what if the time skip is everyone else trying to fix him? 2 years of Jinbei guarding him, Hancock sheltering him, Rayleigh training a body that doesn't want to fight, while the crew scatters and grows strong enough to carry their captain's dream for him. Then, at the edge of the final war, and something snaps back into place. Maybe Sabo falls, maybe the Straw Hat flag burns. Suddenly, those drums of liberation hit late. Gear 5 doesn't debut at Wano, it explodes at Marineford, NES Lobby 2.0, or some god-level battlefield, and the world watches a man who was broken stand up and laugh in the face of the sun. Scenario C is the harshest cut. Luffy dies at Marineford. No rescue, no recovery, no secret cell. His straw hat hits the ground, blood-stained, broadcast to the entire world. The age of Luffy ends before it even begins. But his will doesn't. Shanks takes the hat back into the storm. Sabo takes the D-Law, takes the insane plans. The Straw Hats don't just sail for adventure anymore, they sail as independent captains, each one turning into a pillar of the new world. Here's the kicker. In all 3 worlds, the ripples are brutal. The Marines double down under Sakazuki, hunting emperors with Buster Call-level fleets. The Revolutionary Army goes from shadowy to straight-up militant, with Dragon and Sabo launching open assaults instead of quiet coups. And the new world? It's carved by Law's schemes, Kid's chaos, Sabo's revolution, and the Straw Hats acting as leaders, not just followers. In one world, he's in chains. In another, he's broken. In the last, he's gone. But in all of them, the world he touched can't go back to sleep. So the real question isn't, how does Luffy lose at Marineford? It's this: when the final war finally hits, which of these worlds do you actually want to watch burn? Viewer's choice. Which Marineford disaster do you choose? So now it's your turn, ladies and gentlemen. Yin, we've thrown 3 disasters on the table. Luffy in chains, Luffy broken inside, or Luffy dead on the battlefield of Marineford. Which loss do you actually choose as the main timeline, and why? Which one feels the most compelling or the most terrifying to watch play out in full? Don't just say capture or death in the comments. Build it. If Luffy is dragged away in sea stone cuffs, how do you handle Dressrosa when the future Pirate King is literally a prisoner of the world government? Does Law still gamble everything on him, or does he try to break him out mid-arc while Doflamingo toys with a world that thinks Luffy already lost? In the original timeline, Dressrosa is Luffy's big new world statement. But in this timeline, is it the arc where the world sees him on a public execution platform instead? Or you go with psychological defeat. Luffy survives Marineford, but he's empty. No Gear 5, no drums of liberation, just a man who watched Ace die and decides he will never risk his crew like that again. What does Punk Hazard look like if he refuses to sail into another war? Who drags him back into the fire? Zoro, Jinbei, or Dragon himself? You see, this version of Luffy might be the scariest because the dream dies while the man keeps walking. And then there's the nuclear option. Luffy dies. Instantly. Live on broadcast. If that's your pick, explain it. Who steps up in Wano when Kaido is waiting on the rooftop and the man who will become Pirate King is already gone? Does Zoro lead the charge with a 3-sword sun god style? Does Kid become the reckless symbol of rebellion? Or does Sabo carry the will of D and turn Wano into the first true revolutionary battlefield? Here's the kicker. We also want you to play with the deeper lore. If Gear 5 never awakens at Marineford, when and where do you trigger it instead in your version? Fishman Island, Dressrosa, Whole Cake, Wano, or even later during the final war? And if you killed Luffy off completely, who becomes Joy Boy if Luffy can't? Is it really Blackbeard stealing the Nika fruit? Or do you crown someone wild like Momonosuke, Vivi, or even Kobe as the unexpected savior of the seas? And don't sleep on the Marines. In your disaster, does Akainu win harder and crush the Age of Pirates early? Or does going too far at Marineford instantly create a stronger resistance? Is Luffy's loss the moment Garp finally snaps and defects? Do you have Shanks die to save Luffy and trigger a Yonko civil war? Does Dragonstorm Marineford directly and turn that island into ground zero for the real revolution? Use the comments like a giant writer's room, pitch your branches, argue over who becomes the new Emperor of the Seas, and call out other timelines you want us to fully animate in future videos, because the next saga we build might be yours. Teasing the next, what if Marineford? Akainu falls, Nika rises. And that's just with Luffy losing. That's one branch, one wound in the timeline. But what if Marineford snapped in a completely different way? What if the one who fell was Akainu? In the original timeline, Sakazuki walks out of Marineford a monster, the face of absolute justice, the man who kills Ace and scars Luffy. But in this timeline series, we can flip that. Imagine Whitebeard's final quake not just cracking the island, but slamming straight into Akainu's magma body while Jinbei shields Luffy. The ground splits, the screen goes white, and when the dust settles, the future fleet admiral is gone. Instantly, everything changes. Who leads the Marines then? Aokiji, Kizaru, Sengoku forced to stay, or a shadow candidate the Gorosei have been grooming off-screen? Does Kuzan still walk away, or does he become the reluctant hero holding a shattered institution together, while the Celestial Dragons panic? You see, the moment Akainu dies on live broadcast, the world government's image of invincibility takes a direct hit. Here's the kicker. We can stack these branches. We've just explored a world where Luffy loses at Marineford. But what if Luffy survives that loss while Akainu dies instead? And suddenly, the man who will become Pirate King is a broken symbol the Marines failed to erase, and the most terrifying enforcer of their justice is gone. Pirates are emboldened, revolutionaries are energized, and the Yonko system mutates into something far more unstable. And that's not the only twist on the table. What if Garp finally stops holding back, punches straight through Marine ranks, and drags Luffy out in open defiance of the fleet admiral? Or we go full chaos. Luffy's Gear 5 awakens mid-war, the drums of liberation echo over Marineford, and Nika dances on top of the execution platform while Sengoku and Garp realize the legend from the Void Century is real, and it's wearing a straw hat. Let's dive into that next video. What if Akainu died at Marineford? In that episode, and we'll track how a single death at the top flips Marine leadership, forces the Gorosei to push the Seraphim and God's Knights way earlier, and might even drive the Celestial Dragons to demand a new kind of monster, someone worse than Akainu, to keep their throne safe. This is where our Marineford multiverse really comes alive. One route, Luffy loses. Another, Akainu falls. Another, Gear 5 Nika rises on the battlefield. And when you start combining them, Luffy broken but alive, Akainu dead, Garp defecting. You don't just change Marineford, you rewrite the final war itself. So you tell us, ladies and gentlemen, which fracture do we follow next? Drop your vote in the comments, smash the like button if you want the Akainu dies timeline, and watch for the poll in the community tab. We've seen what happens when Luffy loses. Next time, might we flip it again and see what happens when Marineford breaks the Marines instead? Final reflection. Why Marineford will always be the turning point. Because when you really zoom out, ladies and gentlemen, Marineford isn't just a cool war arc. It's the moment the entire world government system lined up its cannons and tried to execute the future itself. They weren't only killing Ace, they were trying to erase Luffy, to erase the D, to erase the idea that a nobody from East Blue could crash the stage of the gods and demand his friend back. In the original timeline, they only half succeeded. Ace died, Luffy broke, but that broken kid crawled out of Marineford and turned that pain into the 2-year time skip. In this timeline, when Luffy loses outright, we're asking a harsher question. What if the world really did land that killing blow? But what if that's exactly why Marineford hits us so hard, no matter which timeline we explore? Every single what if we've covered is secretly a stress test for One Piece's core themes. How far can you bend freedom before it snaps? How much can you crush friendship before it stops being a strength? How many times can an unjust world stomp on a dream before it finally stays down? You see, when we imagine Luffy captured, executed, or mentally shattered on that scaffold, we're not just changing a battle result. We're putting Oda's message on trial. Does the Age of Pirates end right there on live broadcast? Or does it explode even harder because the whole world just watched the symbol of reckless hope get sacrificed? But here's the kicker. Even in the darkest branches, the spark Luffy lit at Marineford never fully goes out. It just changes hands. Maybe it's Sabo, watching his brother die and turning the revolutionary army into a roaring wildfire. Maybe it's Kobe, shaking in front of a Kainu and deciding that if Luffy couldn't reach true justice, then a Marine will. Maybe it's the next generation of Ds who saw that broadcast and quietly swore, "My turn." The will of D was never about one rubber boy. It's the storm he awakened. And that's why this hurts. Imagining Luffy losing here feels wrong on a gut level, and that discomfort is proof of how much his journey matters to all of us. We're so used to him getting back up that a timeline where he stays down feels like a personal attack. But by pushing into that pain, would we see the outline of what One Piece really is? A story where even when the hero falls, the idea of freedom refuses to die. So Marineford becomes the eternal crossroads. In the original timeline, it's the wound that forges the final Pirate King. In this timeline, it's the grave that turns into a rallying flag. And as long as we keep asking, what if? This one war will keep branching endlessly into new futures we haven't even touched yet. Outro. From Marineford's ashes to your headcanon. And that's where you all come in, ladies and gentlemen. We've laid out one path where Luffy loses at Marineford and the world spirals. But what if this video is just the prologue to your own timeline? You see, Marineford is the perfect lab. Every punch, every tear, every hesitation is a switch you can flip. So here's your challenge. We take this loss and turn it into your own headcanon experiment. Does Luffy die on the spot and the story ends on a burning execution platform? Does he get dragged to Impel Down, chained next to Doflamingo, and the final saga becomes a massive prison break instead of a raid on Onigashima? Or does the war end with Luffy broken in a cell under Maria Joie, and the last battle is the entire world storming the Holy Land to free a pirate king who never set foot in the New World? You decide where your version of One Piece ends, on a gallows, in a jailbreak, or in a war without Luffy on the front line. In the original timeline, Luffy's loss is emotional, and Ace is the one who dies. But in this timeline, flip it. Ask yourself, who picks up the hat? Does Zoro become the captain of a darker Straw Hat crew? Does Ace live and inherit the dream? And sailing with Whitebeard's remnants as the man who will become Pirate King, while Luffy's name turns into a legend whispered by revolutionaries? Or does someone completely unexpected become Joy Boy, Kobe, Vivi, or even Buggy accidentally stumbling into destiny while the world government panics? Drop your wildest twists in the comments. We want the insane ones. Luffy's will of D living on through Sabo, wielding both the Mera and Nika's stolen fruit. A Marine Luffy timeline where he's captured, broken, and then leads a mutiny from inside. Shanks and Dragon forming an alliance because Luffy's loss instantly forces every adult in his life to move. If you can connect it back to Marineford, it belongs here. And if you want to keep tearing apart and rebuilding the most important war in One Piece, you know what to do. Hit subscribe, or ring the bell, and stay locked in, because this Marineford series is not done. We're diving into Ace Live's roots, Gear 5 Awakenings on the Scaffold, Dragon's full invasion, Kaido crashing the war, and timelines where Blackbeard never becomes a Yonko at all. Let's dive into every branch until Marineford looks like a spiderweb of what-if scenarios. Before the next video, rewatch those key Marineford episodes or reread the manga with these what-ifs in mind. Watch Garp standing up, Sengoku hesitating, Blackbeard stepping onto the stage. Count how many times a single step, a single punch, a single second of doubt could have created the timeline you just imagined. Because no matter how many times Marineford breaks him in our what-ifs, somewhere out there, there's still a world where he gets back up and keeps sailing toward the Pirate King's throne.